Hello everyone. Welcome to another part of What If Deku ran an orphanage. If you enjoy the story, please like, subscribe, and share the video. It really helps me out. I did not write the story. The original writer is Kyodon. Please go support them. Now let us dive in. Well, Koda, I have to say your stay here has been a treat, Izuku told the large boy in front of him. Koda nodded. The poor boy looked horribly uncomfortable and was trying and failing to look Izuku in the eye. Kei in particular has really appreciated your presence here. She does love animals. Izuku told him. Koda muttered. Izuku paused and looked at the boy, seeing how horribly uncomfortable he was, and gave him a reassuring smile. You know what? You can go. Well, Sato, out of everyone here, you're in competition for being the biggest help, Izuku told him. Thanks. I tried my absolute best, you know. Sato smiled. The kids deserve at least a good meal after everything they've been through. Putting aside your cooking, which is amazing by the way, you've also helped out with sparring matches, heavy lifting, and of course, you've taught many of my children how to cook, Izuku told him. And honestly, while Achiko and Mina are the favorites among most the kids, I think you're Fuku's favorite. Which is a big achievement considering her trust issues. It's an honor. She's a great kid, you know. Always trying to make stuff for her friends. And she's a real hard worker too. Sato told him. Best student I've had, although I haven't really taught anyone cooking before I got here. Well, from what I hear, when Fuku focuses on something, nothing will stop here. I'm actually a bit concerned she might pull a me and overwork herself. Izuku said. I'm sure everyone else won't let that happen, Sato told him. They're all good kids that look out for each other. And after what happened to you, they'll be on high alert with stuff like that. I hope so. Izuku sighed before refocusing. Well, back to your performance, like I said. You've done an excellent job. And I'm sure the kids will miss you greatly when you leave. I hear your parents run a bakery. I'll have to pay them a visit. You'd love it. My folks are even better at cooking than me. Those kids will be in for a treat. Sato said. Well, now I definitely have to pay them a visit, Izuku said before extending his hand out. Well, I think that's all I have to say on the matter. Please continue to the good work while you're still here. And of course, you're always welcome here if you ever wish to pay us a visit. Thanks. I'll keep that in mind. Sato said, shaking his hand. Don't worry, I'll give it my all. Well, Shoji, you've done a good job at moving things around. Izuku told him, trying to come up with things to say. You don't have to force yourself. I know I haven't exactly been a strong presence here. Shoji told him. Anything I've done here could have been done by one of those giant apes. That's not true. They can't clean or hold anything fragile. Izuku explained. Your quirk makes cleaning the blood and flesh that gets all over the place much easier thanks to you. Out of context, that is a horrifying sentence. Shoji pointed out. Yeah, but that kind of thing happens a lot around here. Izuku sighed. Anyways, don't underestimate your value. Cleaning can be an absolute pain without you. With that said, you're dismissed. So Jiro you. Izuku tried to think of what Jiro did while she was here. I heard you and Kaminari taught Ken and Otoko how to play instruments. Yeah, it was no big deal. Jiro shrugged. You also helped Sansan with her vibration resistance training. That's great. Izuku added. Vibrations were another one of Sansan's weaknesses. Whatever hydrokinetic ability that allowed Sansan to move her body was rather weak, meaning that Sansan could only really move if there was no strong resistance. Meaning things like vibrations, shockwaves, and even strong winds would leave her without control of her body. She was trying to find ways to combat this, which Jiro was a key factor in. I just stood there and blasted sonic waves at her. Still not that big of a deal, dude, Jiro said, casually. Well, I'm sure she appreciates it, Izuku told her. Keep helping her out. Will do, boss, Jiro said slightly sarcastically. Anything else? Not really. Izuku couldn't really find anything else to discuss. You're free to go. So, Zero, I'd like to thank you for all taping off restricted areas. That's likely saved me a lot of time and money. Izuku told the odd-elbowed boy. Whenever an area needed to be restricted, normally because it needed to be repaired, Zero would put up his tape around the area as a sign that no one should enter those areas should be entered without express permission from Izuku. Well, it's the least I could do, you know. Gotta help out where you can. Zero said. Other than this, the swinging training is the only thing of note that I did here. I think the swinging training was very useful. Mobility during a fight or even during a rescue can be key. Izuku brought up. Villains can't hurt you if they can't touch you. That's what I'm hoping for, Zero responded, laughing a bit. I'd appreciate it if you could teach them more about using the environment, Izuku told him. It's a very important part of a fight, and there are few people who make use of it better than you. Well, when life gives you lemons. Zero shrugged. Okay, I think that's all I have to say here. Izuku stuck out his hand, which Zero shook. Keep up the good work. So how'd we do, boss? Dark Shadow asked, floating up to Izuku while Tokoyami sat behind him. Well, most of what you've been doing is training with Kiba and Kai, Izuku explained. Izuku wasn't exaggerating. Most of Tokoyami's contribution, besides being another set of hands, was his sparring matches with Kiba and Kai, and those two specifically. This had to do with the fact that Dark Shadow had two issues when it came to being a sparring partner. If the fight took place during the day or in a well-lit area, then really any of the kids could overpower him. However, if it took place during the night or in a poorly lit area, then the kids could be in serious danger, seeing as Tokoyami may not be able to stop Dark Shadow before he does real damage to the kids. The only exceptions to this rule were Sansen, Netsu, Ken in his He-Blast form, Kiba, and Kai. Sansen, Netsu, and Ken weren't really fights. Dark Shadow couldn't really hurt Sansen, so that was a pointless spar. And Netsu and Ken both beat Dark Shadow really easily, meaning the only ones who could get anything out of a spar with Dark Shadow was Kai and Kiba, although he would have Netsu nearby to stop the fight. I apologize that we couldn't be more useful during our time here, Tokoyami said, giving an apologetic bow. Izuku was starting to really get tired of hearing that. It's fine. Getting good sparring partners for Kai is a pain. It's good for Kiba to fight someone above her in strength. She needs experience in that department, Izuku told him. Other than that, another set of hands is always useful. And we have 2 sets, Dark Shadow said enthusiastically. That's right, Izuku said. Now, I think that's all we needed to go over. You two are free to go. I want to say again, Todoroki, how sorry I am for what Yonda did, Izuku said to start off the meeting. It's fine. I'm getting over it, Todoroki told him. Now are we going to get on to the review? Well, there's not much to say really, Izuku told him. There was the incident with Kiba, but given you lack of experience with people and the incident later with Yonda, I'm not going to hold that against you. Other than that, all you did was laundry, which I appreciate, don't get me wrong. I know how painfully long and tedious that can be. But there isn't much to discuss. Alright, in that case, am I free to go? Todoroki asked. Yeah. Thank you for your time, Izuku told him. And once again, thank you for now suing me. I don't think I could. If I told my father about what Yonda did and that it resulted in me finally using my fire, he'd most likely send you a check, Todoroki said. Well, if you need anything at all, remember that the Midoriya Foundation owes you a favor, Izuku told him. I'll keep that in mind, Todoroki said, before taking his leave. Well, Hagakure, you've done a good job at keeping up morale alongside Mina and helping out during lessons, Izuku told the invisible girl. Well, I try my best, Toru said, repeating the same thing Izuku had been hearing all day. But I really wish I dash. Please don't say you wish you could do more. Izuku slumped onto his desk. I've had to hear that over and over again. You guys did fine. You lightened the load a lot and let me recover from my collapse. Thank you. There was a brief moment of silence as Toru was stunned by Izuku's sudden outburst. Eventually, however, Izuku picked his head back up. I'm sorry for that, it's just, today has been kind of stressful. I'm not used to being the boss, you could say. And I'm not really used to other people saying things like that. You don't like other people devaluing themselves? Toru asked, raising an invisible eyebrow. Well, imagine how your mom and Uraraka feel. Oh, right? Izuku realized his hypocrisy. I guess I do say stuff like that a lot too. Is that how they feel when I say it? I really owe both of them an apology. Okay, but a piece of advice, after you apologize, don't keep apologizing, Toru told him. Thank you. Izuku groaned, picking himself up to continue to the review. Overall, you've done a great job, thank you for your help. You're free to go. Wow, that was short, come to think about it, these have all been pretty short, Toru noted. I'll be honest, I have no idea what I'm doing, Izuku admitted. I just figured this was something an employer should do and tried it out. I don't think it's going too well. Well, at least you're trying. Toru tried to reassure him. And that's what really matters. Thank you, Hagakure. Keep up the good work, Izuku told her. Izuku and Shinso stared at each other for a while, neither of them knowing what to say for a while. I'm willing to bet you forgot I was here at least a few times, Shinso spoke up. You're not wrong, Izuku admitted. But I guess that's desirable if you want to be an underground hero. Right? Yeah, sounds about right, Shinso responded. And then the silence returned. Shinso is another person whose contribution could be summed up as another pair of hands. And given Shinso's tendency to not stick out, Izuku really did have a hard time remembering he was here. If you're not gonna say anything, I'm just gonna go, Shinso said, getting up to leave. Yeah, that's probably for the best, Izuku told him. When I first heard you'd be coming to work here, I was a bit worried, Mineta, Izuku explained. But you've done a great job of keeping your less admirable traits hidden from the children. Well, I tried to stay away from them as much as possible, Mineta admitted with little shame. Can't slip up and let them hear something they shouldn't if they're not around me to begin with. Well, at least you're aware of it. Izuku sighed. Other than that, you've done a great job helping out with the paperwork. Now, I think we should address the elephant in the room. Mineta winced. Do you mean the gacha thing? Yes, the gacha thing. Izuku deadpanned. As much as I'm not happy about my children getting addicted to gambling, part of me felt like this was inevitable. It only takes one of them to learn about these games before it spreads to the entire house. At the very least, you gave me the chance to nip any bad spending habits in the bud and lay down some ground rules about these games. And give them a good lesson about spending. If anything, I'm less upset about you introducing them to these games and more upset that you didn't give them a proper warning about how these games can affect them. Or at least tell me that you exposed them to this. Well, I didn't really think it was a big deal at the time. Mineta shrugged nervously. Although in hindsight, you probably should have given you a heads up. Sorry. Just think about the consequences of your actions in the future, Izuku advised. Got it, boss? Mineta said. All right, with that said, you are free to go, Izuku said. So then, Yaoyorozu, I have to say you have been an enormous help in keeping everything organized, Izuku told the last member of 1A except technically Bakugo, but he wasn't here. And you've been a massive help in clearing up the paperwork. You've gotten through it as fast as I normally do. It was a shock to see how fast I managed to get through it all, Momo admitted. When I first saw the stack of papers I'd have to work through, I thought it would take me weeks. But after a couple of days, they were done. Unfortunately, they were swiftly replaced with an equally dense pile of papers. Yeah, when you're dealing with an operation as massive as this one, the paperwork never really ends. Izuku sighed. Even on my end with the massively reduced workload you guys afforded me, the papers just kept coming. Ugh. But back to the review, I also have to thank you for helping out with the lesson plans and tutoring, as well as Nara's personal lessons. It means so much to me that these kids are getting a good education. Yes, I was wondering if you had a replacement teacher in mind for when we leave? Momo asked. Well, yes, actually, Izuku answered tentatively. I have my eye on someone. They're not someone who'd be expected for me to hire, so I'm more confident that they are not an assassin. However, the reason for them being unexpected is the same reason I'm a bit apprehensive to actually hire them. Are they dangerous? Momo asked, looking a bit worried. I don't think so, Izuku answered, sounding unsure. But they have the potential to be, and I have to find a way to check their intentions before I let them anywhere near the house. Can't you just hire a normal teacher? Momo asked. They sent a child assassin after me, Yaoyorozu. Izuku reminded her. Whoever is after me wants me dead. Badly. And is willing to use almost any tactic to achieve that. And if I were them, I would want to get my best men, set them up as teachers, and then have them kill me when they get here. And of course, to make sure they get hired, they would make it so they have the best resume, make them look the most appealing. So I can't afford to have a normal hiring method. Well, I've never had assassins after me before, so I suppose I can't really comment on that, Momo replied, still not sounding convinced. Just please be careful that in your attempts to avoid these assassins, you don't end up falling prey to unrelated dangers. Fair enough. Izuku nodded in agreement. Thank you for the advice, Yaoyorozu. You may take your leave. Why did I think that was a good idea? Izuku groaned as he slumped into his couch with a face full of remorse. I've never had employees before. How was I supposed to review them? Did I go too easy on them? Was I too harsh? What was I supposed to do? What was I supposed to say? Listening to Izuku vent on the couch opposite to him was his mother, smiling patiently. I think you did fine for your first time, Izuku. These kids were all doing their best and none of them really needed to be told anything in particular. Then what was the point of this? Izuku asked. Inko shrugged. There are lots of pointless things in business, Izuku. Things like this just kind of happen. Don't worry too much about it. It's not like it took a lot of their time, well, except for Mina, but that was important. I guess. Still, I feel bad about calling them for something pointless. Izuku sighed. I guess I could give them another pay raise. Izuku, you can't give your employees a raise every time something slight inconvenient happens, Inko told him. If you do something you think slightly inconveniences your employees, stop. That's it. Well, if you say so. Izuku sighed. Oh, and Izuku. I wanted to tell you I'll be leaving around the same time the UA students do. Inko explained. Really? Izuku asked, looking a bit startled. It feels like we barely talked. Well, we've both been busy, Inko told him. And we both know I'm not exactly one to stand out, unlike Mitsuki. I wish I could stay longer, but I have work to do. I've seen the finances here, and I'm more sure now than ever that I need to grow my business as much as possible. That's fair. Izuku sighed. I'm gonna miss you, Mom. Oh, sweetheart. Inko got up, walked around the table, and hugged her son. I'm not gone yet. How about we go watch some of those All Might movies together like we used to? You know what? I'd like that. All right, guys. Listen up. Mina shouted to her entire class, who had all gathered together. We don't have long until we leave, so we need to do something special. Let's get the party planning begin. It had been 2 days since Izuku's performance reviews, and 1A had been hard at work in the backyard. Sure, they still did a lot of the basic things they needed to do, Sato still cooked, and they still taught lessons, but most of their time was spent in the backyard, working on something. And the kids weren't allowed to see what it was, as Izuku banned them from going into the backyard, and all the ways that one could normally see the backyard from inside the house had been blocked off, and the entrance to the backyard was being guarded by Shoji. It was clear that whatever this was, it was supposed to be a surprise. With only 1A, Izuku and a select number of the kids were informed of what was going on. These kids were Yanda, of course, Fuku, and Kyoku, who were told for reasons that went unexplained, and all of them were being tight-lipped. So when, after breakfast, Izuku asked for all the kids to gather around the entrance to the backyard, almost everyone was excited. What do you think they've been doing? Ken asked all the other kids who'd gathered at the entrance. That being Eri, Kei, Kiba, Fu, Sanson, Kota, Shiruku, Yami, Otoko, Netsu, Nara, and of course Ken himself. My guess is that it's some kind of going-away party, given how they're gonna be leaving soon. Fu guessed. Although you'd think we'd be the ones making the preparations. Seems a bit weird to make a party for yourselves. Is it? I had birthday parties for myself before I met Daddy. Kei said. Kei, you say the most casually sad things I've ever heard, Fu responded. Before the conversation could continue, Achiko came in. All right, everyone. I'm sure you've noticed we've been up to something for the past couple of days, and now it's finally time to show you what we've been working on. All right. Netsu cheered with excitement. This better be good, Ken said with an equal amount of excitement. Yeah. Sanson screamed. Okay. Let's go. Achiko opened the door, and she and the kids charged outside and saw that the backyard had been changed. The most noticeable was a giant stage with a judging panel in it and bleachers behind it. Another very noticeable thing was that part of the nearby forest had been cleared out, and in its place were 2 different racing courses on opposite sides, although they could only see the starting lines. There was another, smaller stage with a bunch of weights on them. Close to that, there was a big pit with some weird green slime in there. The court also had 2 large walls put on either side of it. Lastly, there were a bunch of tables set up, seemingly for dining. Surprise! Mina shouted as she and 1A Sans Momo were all standing outside waiting for them, along with Kai, who was off to the side. We decided to have one big field day. We're gonna have lots of competitions, and Momo even made trophies. There's also gonna be a big feast, and tonight we're gonna do a fireworks show. Toru explained enthusiastically. A fireworks show? Kei screamed excitedly. I love fireworks. Shiruka shouted with a look of pure joy on her face. Forget the light show. What kind of competitions? Kiba asked. Oh, you'll see. Mina said. Let's not waste time. Let the games begin. The first competition was a simple one. Tug of war. This was what the pit was built for. The rules went as such: there would be 2 teams, a boys' team and a girls' team. Both of them would be on either side of the pit and would have to pull a rope to force the other side to fall into the pit and the slime. As for the teams, for the boys, there was Sato, Ken, Fu, and Kai. Kai was exempt from having to fall into the pit because of his size. And for the girls, there was Nara, Kiba, Achiko, and Shiruku. And both teams were using special sports tracksuits to make sure their clothes didn't get dirty from the slime. Both teams were ready to go, holding the huge steel rope. Kai used all 3 of his heads to bite onto it. Ken was using his 4 arms transformation, and Nara was using her human geyser transformation. Sato had eaten a ton of sugar, and Achiko was using 15% full cowling. You ready to lose? Ken taunted, looking specifically at his sister and Kiba. As if. Nara and Kiba said at the same time. Last time I checked, human geyser was stronger than 4 arms dweeb. Nara said in her now extremely deep voice. But he's not alone. Sato smirked. Sorry ladies, but you're all going straight into the pit. We'll see about that. Achiko shouted back confidently, her competitive spirit lit like a match. Fu looked back and Kai nodded back. All right, let the tug-of-war begin. Mina called, waving a flag to signify the start of the match. Immediately, both sides started pulling, using their immense strength to try and pull the other side towards them. At first, it was hard to see who was winning. Both sides seemed rather equal, with the boys moving very, very slowly towards the hole. However, that soon changed as the girls started kicking it up a notch. 18% full cowling. Achiko shouted. Raha! Nara screamed as she increased in size, spikes growing from her neck and head as well as her tail as she went full power mode. Suddenly, the boys were moving towards the hole much faster. Gah! No! Ken shouted as the pit rapidly got closer and closer. Need to buy more time. Moving to phase 2. Fu thought. Kyosei's tendrils wrapped around all of the boys before more of them went deep into the ground, spreading like roots to try and help ground them and keep them from getting pulled. At the same time, Kyosei spread between the fibers of the rope, merging with it and pulling towards them, making it so the rope itself was trying to move towards the boys. This significantly slowed down the pace at which the boys moved toward the pit, but they were still being pulled toward it, just much slower. Clever brother, but you've only stalled your defeat, Kiba stated confidently. Guys, I don't think we can win, Fu stated. Don't give up. Sato shouted as he tugged with all his might. Come on guys. Keep pulling. I'm trying. Ken shouted. Soon, the boys were beginning to teeter on the edge of the pit with Sato's foot right next to the hole. We're almost there, girls. Achiko shouted with a big smile on her face. They're done for. Shiruka stated confidently. Get ready to eat slime doofus. Nara shouted at her brother. In response, Fu smirked. Time for stage 3. He raised one of his hands and gave Kai a thumbs up. Seeing the signal, Kai knew it was time. And he actually started trying, giving the rope his strongest tug. Whoa, /ha/ah. Everyone on both sides shouted out in surprise as Kai's sudden yanking took everyone off guard as the rope suddenly shot back towards the boys' side. However, Fu was prepared of course, and using Kyosei's tendrils, he made sure no one got flung into the air or tripped up and stood their ground. The same could not be said for the girls, who were immediately taken off guard, all of them fell forward. This quickly resulted in them being pushed into the pit and falling into the slime. Splat! And the boys win, Mina announced. Yay! Kai shouted out, screaming with excitement while everyone except him and Fu was all extremely confused as to what just happened. Kai lowered his head towards Fu. Big brother, your plan worked. We won. Yep. Good job, Kai, Fu said, petting Kai's head. You too, Kyosei. What just happened? Ken asked, happy they won but confused as to where all that power came from. Oh, well you see, I realized pretty quickly that we wouldn't be able to win under normal circumstances, Fu explained. Those girls are just way too strong. So I needed a plan. So I talked to Kai before we started and told him not to start trying until I gave him the signal. We'd wait until the girls got confident and then take them by surprise, make them trip and pull them into the hole before they could get over the shock. Wow, good thinking, kid. You gave them the tug-of-war equivalent of a sucker punch. Sato gave Fu a high five. Foul. I call foul. Kiba jumped out of the hole, her clothes covered in slime. Deceiving us like that. What an underhanded trick, Fu. Yeah, we definitely would have won if they fought fair. Shiruku objected as she crawled out of the pit, Achiko and Nara following behind. We fought fair. Nothing in the rules said we couldn't do that. Fu countered. This wasn't a competition to see who was stronger, it was to see which side to put the other side in the pit. And you fell, so we won. Hear that, losers, we won fair and square. Ken gloated. Don't get a big head. The only reason you won is because of Fu and Kai. Nara rebutted. Now. Everyone settle down. Ida came in to break up the argument. There will be no sore losers or winners. The boys won fair and square, fighting smarter, not harder. Ken and Sato were still very important to Fu's plan even if they didn't know about it. After all, the plan wouldn't work if they all fell in the hole right away. Shoji pointed out. And it's your own fault for not paying attention, Shinso added, scolding the girls. If you had, you would have noticed that Kai's heads weren't moving at all until Fu gave the signal. Not to mention Fu's plan relied on all of you getting overconfident, so if it worked you only have yourselves to blame for not keeping your guards up. All the girls' eyes widened and their faces went red with embarrassment as they realized the blame for their defeat rested mostly on them. Kiba, did you really think I would ever try to beat you with a trick under my sleeve? Fu asked her. Kiba stared at him blankly for a moment before tilting her head down. And for a moment everyone got a bit worried that Kiba might throw a tantrum or something. But their fears were abated when Kiba tilted her head up towards the sky and laughed, putting her hands on her hips. Ahahaha. Touché Fu. Touché. But know that every defeat I suffer only makes me stronger. Next time we face each other, I will come out victorious. That's the spirit, Kiba. Achiko grinned, patting her on the back. All right, and here are your rewards. Mina announced as Shoji came forward holding 4 medals. Congratulations to our tug-of-war champions. Sato, Fu, Ken, and Kai. Shoji put the medals on all of their necks except Kai, whose head was too big, and as such he hung it on one of his teeth. Phew. Man, I am pooped. Sato was struggling not to just pass out there, and now, as his quirk's downsides started to rear their ugly head. I'm gonna take a quick nap and then join back with the cooking team. Go ahead, big guy, you've earned it. Mina told him, patting him on the back as he walked back towards the house. Now, after a short break, we'll move on to the next event. Okay, boys and girls, it's time for the next event, Mina announced. Dodgeball. Everyone was now at the court, with the participants standing on the court while everyone else sat on the bleachers. On the court were Fu, Su, Kiba, Nara, Ojiro, Sansen, Netsu, Ken, Achiko, Shiruku, Shoji, and Tokoyami. All right, with all our contestants lined up, it's time to decide who is on whose team, Mina said, picking up a hat and holding it out towards everyone. In this hat are pieces of paper, blue and red respectively. These will decide what team you're on, so go ahead and pull one out. Blue team to the left and red team to the right. All the participants lined up and took a paper from the hat before lining up on opposite sides of the court. On the left side was the red team. Su, Kiba, Ojiro, Sansen, Netsu, and Nara. On the right was blue team. Fu, Achiko, Shiruku, Shoji, Tokoyami, and Ken. Would you look at that, the chance to avenge myself has arrived sooner than I thought, Kiba said, looking right at Fu. Either that or the chance to learn from another defeat, Fu responded. Either way, win-win. All right. With the teams decided, I'll go over the rules while Kaminari and Jiro set up the balls, Mina said. Kaminari snickered as he worked. Balls? Jiro rolled her eyes. Really? Grow up. So the rules are simple: if you get hit by the ball, you're out. If you catch the ball, you stay in, Mina explained. Normally if you caught the ball, the person who threw it would be out, but that might be a bit unfair to the people who only have 2 hands. Also, you can only catch things with hands or things that look like hands. So Sansen, Kyosei, if you want to catch them, you have to make hands. Also, you're not allowed to really hurt anyone. If you do, then you're out. Unless it's Sansen of Fu, because you can't really injure them with dodgeballs. Alright, now with those rules in place, Ken, Nara, do your thing. Right? They both said at the same time before activating their Omnitrixes. After a flash of green and pink, Ken had turned into 4 arms again and Nara was XLR8. No one try to go for the balls, Fu said immediately. We're not gonna outspeed Nara. Don't even try. Just go on the defensive. Alrighty then, with that done, let the game begin, Mina signaled. Immediately, just as Fu predicted, Nara dashed forward at extreme speeds and grabbed all 6 dodge balls before anyone on their side could get one. Kiba, Netsu, Su, you guys are our cannons. Me, Sansen, and Ojiro will go on defense, Nara said, handing 2 balls each to those 3 individuals. Oh yeah. Netsu smirked and set one of the balls down before tossing the other one up, and as it came down, he hit forward with his palm while also creating an explosion of fire in his hand, causing the ball to fly towards Tokoyami like a rocket. Dark Shadow came out and caught the ball, just barely. Kiba threw both balls at Fu at high speed, one aiming for his chest, the other for his leg. Fu, rather than move out of the way, had his entire upper body fold back, using Kyosei to move his body at high speeds and in unnatural ways, snapping his spine in half to dodge one of the balls and snapping his leg upwards to dodge the other ones, causing the balls to fly past him, and Fu sent out 2 tendril arms to grab them before they rebounded back. Su tossed up the balls before jumping up and kicking them at Achiko and Shiruku. Achiko dodged out of the way and Shoji extended an arm in front of Shiokuru, catching it, and Fu used a tentacle to catch the one Achiko dodged. Netsu, realizing he had the last ball, decided to take aim at Ken. Boom. Netsu shot him another explosive shot, this time more powerful, right at Ken, hoping he wouldn't have time to react. But Ken was alert and reacted quickly, and with 4 arms he was able to cover a lot of his body and caught the ball, quickly putting out the fire that was on the ball. Thankfully they were fire resistant. With all the balls on the blue team's side, it was time for some retaliation. Everyone target Ojiro, Fu said as he used his tentacle to redistribute the balls, giving 2 to Shiruku and 2 to Achiko, giving 1 to Ken and keeping 1 to himself. Ha! Ojiro went on guard at hearing he was going to be targeted as everyone on the blue but Fu tossed the balls right at Ojiro. Kiba and Nara ran in and caught 2 of the balls. Sansan managed to extend her seld, creating arms to grab 2 of them, and Ojiro caught the last one. And Su is out, Mina called. Ha! Kiba cried out in confusion, looking over to the left where Tsu had been to see a ball on the floor in front of her, seeming to have bounced off her. You guys really need to pay attention, Fu reminded them. As it turns out, while everyone was distracted by the attack on Ojiro, Fu a second later than everyone else sneakily threw his ball at Tsu while she was running over to defend Ojiro, hitting her in the shoulder. Well, I guess I'm out, Tsu said as she walked off the field. Be careful guys, Fu's a tricky one. We know, Kiba said, glaring at Fu. Well then, let's try this. Kiba jumped into the air and threw the ball down at Fu with incredible strength. The ball moved too so fast Fu had no hope of dodging it in time, so he once again had Kyosei snap him in half, bending back in an inhuman fashion and allowing the ball to fly behind him. However, this was Kiba's plan, and the ball, still moving at incredible speeds, bounced off the wall and headed right towards Fu's legs. Splat! The ball hit Fu's legs, destroying them as it moved back towards Kiba's side. Sansan caught the ball as it came back to their side, although it was now covered in blood and still had some bone dust as well. Fu is out, Mina called as Fu now lay on the ground as his legs grew back. Ha, didn't know you could do that, Fu said as he used Kyosei's tendrils to push him back up onto his almost regenerated feet. I guess you underestimated me, Kiba said, smirking proudly at the undead boy. Guess I did. Good work. But don't let it go to your head, Fu warned her as he stepped off the field. With that done, Nara immediately went over to Netsu and went to give one of the balls to him. Here you go. Thanks. Netsu went to take the ball, but suddenly Nara zipped away from him towards the front of the line that divided her side from the other teams and threw it at Ken. But Ken knew she was faking him out. She was his sister after all, so he knew that if she wanted to give the ball to Netsu, she would have just sipped it into his hand, and so he was ready, quickly raising his arms and catching the ball. Nice try, loser. I know your tricks. Darn it, Nara muttered. Sorry, Netsu, I wanted to get the drop on him. Don't worry about it. Netsu reassured her as he picked up the ball that hit Tsu. I got this. Let's go. Sansan called as she took Ojiro's ball and held all 4 balls in front of Kiba. Kiba smirked. Good thinking, sister. Bang, 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 bang. Kiba smacked the balls in quick succession, aiming at Achiko, Shoji, and Ken, specifically aiming 2 at Achiko to make sure. Achiko and Shoji jumped out of the way and Ken spun around to avoid the ball and threw his own ball at Kiba. Boom. Then, Netsu blasted a ball at Achiko, hitting her while she was dodging the other balls. Ken's ball hit Kiba and the ball Kiba threw at Ken rebounded and hit Ken's foot. Uraraka, Ken, and Kiba are all out, Mina called. Darn, Achiko muttered in frustration. Not my best day. Aw man. Ken groaned. Curses. Kiba swore as she pouted heavily. Ha! That's what you get for being cocky. Nara taunted her brother. Don't get too full of yourself. You just lost your big gun. Ken called out as Kiba and Achiko walked off the field. Although my elimination is a heavy loss, I have faith my team will succeed in my absence, Kiba said as they went off to the side. Meanwhile, both teams were struggling to get as many balls as they could. Sansan picked up the 3 balls that ended up on her side, while Shiruku, Shoji, and Dark Shadow picked up the balls on their side. Oh! Give me one. I have an idea, Netsu shouted. Immediately the other side got defensive, putting their balls down as they saw Sansan hand a ball to Netsu, getting ready to defend themselves. Netsu smirked and then tossed the ball up. Solar flare. Suddenly, the brightness of Netsu's flames exploded, the bright light blinding everyone. Ag! Dark Shadow recoiled from the light, shrinking away, leaving Tokoyami completely exposed. The ball came down and Netsu smacked it at Tokoyami, hitting him right in the chest. Then, while still emitting a blinding light, Netsu grabbed the 2 other balls and threw them right at Shiruku and Shoji, who were stumbling around, unable to see. Once he was sure he hit them, Netsu turned down the light. And blue team is out, I think, Mina said, blinking rapidly like everyone else after her eyes got blasted with light. Did you guys get hit? I couldn't see anything. Shiruka sighed. I got hit. Me as well, Tokoyami said, lowering his head. I did too, Shoji admitted. Well then, red team wins, Mina announced. That's so cheap, Ken cried out. But not against the rules. Now don't be a sore loser, Mina told him. Kaminari, Jiro, the medals if you would. Red team gathered up as the two students bestowed medals on them. Good job, Netsu. Su praised him. Indeed, your strategy sealed their fates and ensured our victory, Kiba added. The whole team was abuzz with praise and they probably would have patted him on the back or lifted him if he weren't on fire. Netsu's flames became slightly more intense as he blushed, giving them a smile almost as bright as the solar flare he unleashed. Thanks, guys. I couldn't have done it without you. Everyone gave their applause, even the blue team, although for Ken it was begrudging. Congratulating them. Okay. After another short break, we'll be moving on to the next event, Mina announced. Get ready to go. Plus Ultra. All right, everyone. It took us a while, but we finally set everything up, Mina announced. Most of the kids and Class 1A were sitting on the grass, looking up at a big screen that 1A had set up. On the screen was Sansan, Shiruku, Fu, Kiba, Su, Zero, Juken, as Wildmutt, Nara, as Wildvine, and Achiko, all in trees standing on big branches. This footage was being gathered by drones scattered through the forest, courtesy of Momo. All of this equipment was being operated by Mineta off in the corner via computers, something he was very familiar with handling. Now it's time the floor is lava, Mina said. Now to explain the rules real quick. Your goal is not to touch the ground and you have to make everyone else touch the ground as well, without attacking them directly. If you touch the ground, you're out. If you attack someone else directly, you're out. All right. Now, get ready. 3, 2, 1, go. As soon as Mina called it, Kiba burst from her tree and immediately smashed Ken's tree before retreating back to her own branch. Ken jumped off his now falling tree onto a new tree. However, the second he landed on it, Shiruku shot a web shot at Ken's claws, sticking him to the tree. Rah! Ken roared out in anger before Kiba went and smashed that tree as well, causing it to fall while Ken was still stuck to it, meaning he couldn't jump away. Ken's tree hit the ground, bringing Ken with it. And Ken is out, Mina announced using the drone's loudspeaker. Good. Ken growled at the two girls, looking down on him with cocky smirks. Smash! Achiko smashed through Kiba's tree, causing it to start to fall before grabbing into another tree and jumping up onto a branch. Don't get cocky, girls. Whoa. Kiba jumped off her falling tree, heading towards another tree, but before she could reach it. Kaboom! Nara threw her methane-filled pods at the nearby trees' bases, exploding on impact and causing them to fall, including the tree Kiba was heading towards. Now without any trees to land on or anything to touch, Kiba was left stuck in the air, quickly falling to the ground. Twip! Shiruka shot a web at Kiba before she hit the ground, before yanking her towards herself and grabbing her. Looks like Kiba and Shiruku are teaming up, Fu thought before using Kyosei's tendrils to hop away deeper into the forest. Boom! Nara threw another seed bomb at the tree that Shiruku was perched on, causing her to jump off it, still carrying Kiba as she went deeper into the forest away from Nara. With that, Su, Achiko, Sansan, and Zero all decided to retreat away from Nara's relentless onslaught of bombs, heading in separate directions deeper into the forest. They're all too fast for me to follow except for Sansan, Nara thought before giving chase to the acid girl. Sansan's amorphous form moved through the trees easily, her body latching onto at least 3 trees at once before moving onto the next. How do I trip her up? Nara wondered as she followed, her vine legs doing similar things to Sansan's tendrils, easily allowing her to move from tree to tree. Even if I blow up 1 tree or even 5, she can switch between them on the fly. There was, of course, one way to take down Sansan. However, it wasn't a method available to her. Shooting star! Achiko shouted as she rocketed towards them, touching Sansan as she went past. Whoa! Nara barely managed to duck in time, keeping Achiko from touching her. Immediately, Sansan fell to the ground, Achiko having increased her gravity. Sansan is out, Mina announced. Achiko landed on a branch and put her fingers together. Release. The effects of the increased gravity wore off and Sansan could move freely again. Boom! 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 Nara immediately started going for Achiko, throwing as many seed bombs as possible at the tree Achiko was standing on and all the trees surrounding her. Not having much to stand on, Achiko decided to use her quirk on herself, jumping into the air and floating. Oh, come on! How am I supposed to knock her down if I can't attack her? Nara wondered as Achiko started floating away. She wasn't moving very fast, but given how many trees Nara destroyed, it wouldn't be long until Achiko got out of her range. Think, Nara, think. Wait a minute. Nara pulled out a bunch of seed bombs from her back and threw them over where Achiko was going to be. The bombs went over Achiko's position and exploded. The explosion didn't hit Achiko, not even close, but a bit of the shockwave that came from the explosion did, sending her hurtling down. Oh, Sirayak! Achiko grunted as she hit the ground. And Achiko is eliminated, Mina announced. Achiko pouted, releasing the effect of her quirk on herself before pulling herself to her feet. After shaking off her disappointment at losing, Achiko looked at Nara and put on an encouraging smile. Nice work, Nara. That was some great thinking there. Thanks. Nara smiled back, feeling proud of herself. But that feeling of pride would soon vanish. Twip! Twip! Multiple web shots hit Nara, sticking her to the tree. Shouldn't have let your guard down. Shiruku called from several trees away. Smash! Kiba then rushed in and smashed through the lower part of the trees before getting snatched by Shiruku's web and brought back to her. The tree fell, bringing Nara down with it. And Nara is eliminated, Mina announced. Darn it, Nara said, disappointed in herself for having lowered her guard. Great work, sister. Kiba complimented her partner. Truly, this allegiance was a spectacular idea. Indeed. Shiruka nodded, putting Kiba down on a branch. Now, let's go look for Dash. Siro and Sue are out. They heard Mina announce. Huh. Kiba and Shiruka said at the same time, looking at the drone in shock. Fu must have taken them out. Kiba quickly assessed. We must find him quickly. There's no knowing what strategies he'll come up with if we give him time. Yeah, he is far too clever for his own good, Shiruka said. Let's go. The two continued their search, jumping around from tree to tree, looking for Fu, but they hadn't seen hide nor hair of him. Eventually, they stopped on a branch to catch their breath. Damn it, where is he? Kiba lamented. He must be hiding, maybe he's waiting to ambush us, Shiruka said. Well, you got that right? Quickly, Shiruku and Kiba looked up. On a higher branch in the tree they were in was Fu. This caused Shiruku and Kiba to pause in both shock and concern. If Fu was giving himself away, then something had to be up. What's the meaning of this, Fu? Kiba asked him, looking intently at him to see if any of Kyosiai's tendrils would pop out of him. Waiting for him to attack. What tricks do you have up your sleeve? Oh, it's something I've been practicing for a while, Fu said casually, completely relaxed despite the situation. I call it mobile shell. Suddenly, Kiba and Shiruku were grabbed by Kyosiai. But he wasn't attached to Fu, although he was still wrapped around someone, as the arms grabbing them by their necks while covered in Kyosiai's tendrils were still human arms underneath. What? Both of them were too shocked to move for a second, and Kyosiai took that time to fall backward off the branch, bringing them down with him. As they were approaching the ground, Shiruka shot out a web at a tree in a desperate attempt to stop themselves from falling, but Kyosiai extended his body over her, catching the web before it could go anywhere. With that attempt foiled, they fell to the ground, hitting it in seconds. Shiruku and Kiba are out, Mina announced. That makes Fu, the winner of the floor is lava competition. Hi! Kiba and Shiruka screamed, confused as to what just happened. Wait 1 minute, Kiba said, swiftly getting up and looking at Fu. If you're up there, then who's with Kyosiai? To answer this question, Kyosiai separated from his current host, revealing that underneath was Fu's corpse. It looked exactly like Fu, but just dead, or rather completely dead, unlike Fu who was undead. Ah! Shiruku immediately got up and moved away from the corpse before covering her nose. Oh, it smells. Ugh. Since when could you make doppelgangers? Kiba asked him angrily, still upset from her surprise loss. Since always, Fu answered. It's just only learned how to properly make them now. You see, normally whenever I regenerate, whatever parts of me that weren't used for my regeneration just lay there. And so I took advantage of that. Take a look at my left hand, or rather what was my left hand. The two of them looked and saw that the left hand on Fu's former body had its pinky missing. For a few seconds, they just looked at it in confusion before their eyes widened. Don't tell me you ripped off your own pinky finger and regrew your body from that. Kiba looked up at him in shock. How? Well, you see, I figured something out. I am completely unaffected by the destruction of my brain. Why is that? You'd think I'd need that to think and stuff. Fu started explaining. But if you destroy my brain, it's just as harmful to me as taking off a finger. What's more, if you destroy it entirely, I'm still conscious. And if you take me apart, I can choose what part of me I grow back from. So I came to the conclusion that every part of my body is a brain in some way. Meaning if I choose to, I can grow back my body from a ripped-off finger even if the rest of me is fine. Because that finger is just as much me as the rest of my body. That's just, wow, Shiruka said, still shocked at this revelation. So do you cut off your finger and the rest of you goes limp? Pretty much, Fu said, as Kyosei finished crawling up the tree back towards him and re-entered his body. And since the body has a brain and organs, Kyosei can use it just fine, at least for a little while. Very clever little guys, but it's time for the game to end, so if you would come back so we can give you your awards. Mina told them. Fu, Kiba, and Shiruku were all standing on a podium with everyone watching around them. With of course Fu standing on the highest one, Shiruku on the second highest, and Kiba on the lowest one. In shared second place we have Shiruku and Kiba. Mina announced as Shoji came in, holding 2 medals and a trophy. Shoji came in and placed the 2 second-place medals on both Kiba and Shiruku, who didn't look very pleased about it but kept quiet. And first place goes to everyone's favorite corpse. Fu. Mina announced, getting a round of applause. Shoji awarded Fu the trophy and he held it high into the air. I would like to thank Kyosei for, well, the obvious. And I would like to thank Kiba and Shiruku for taking out Ken so early, that way this strategy could actually work. Because that would not have worked on Ken. TCH. Ken frowned, wishing he'd lasted longer. All right, everyone. Now it's time to fill up. Mina said as the doors to the house opened up. Sato, Izuku, Momo, Fuku, Kyoku, Inko, and Yanda all came out pushing carts that were covered with all sorts of foods. Oh, that smells amazing. Toru said in a voice that could only make you imagine how hungry she looks. Great, I need to eat a lot after using mobile shell, Fu said, eager to get some food in his stomach. I too am excited to indulge in a bountiful feast after vigorous exercise. Kiba licked her lips looking at the steaks on one of the carts. Are those candy apples? Eri gasped, spotting her favorite treat on a cart. Aw man, I can't wait to get that in my mouth, Kaminari said, causing Mineta and Jiro to have to hold in their laughter. We made all of this for you guys, so I hope you like it. Fuku stuttered. We've all been working hard to make sure this would a meal you'd never forget. Sato announced. So please dig in, Izuka said with a smile. And so they descended like a swarm of locusts onto the food carts. In the chaos, Fuku managed to slip out with 2 plates of food and headed toward the bleachers. And under there, sitting away from everyone else, was Mu, where he'd been the whole time. I brought the food, Fuku said, handing a plate to Mu, who eagerly accepted it. Thank you, Mu said, before digging in. Fuku watched him eat for a few seconds and gave a sigh of relief when she saw him enjoying her food. She then looked back at everyone else enjoying the food she and the cooking team had worked hard to make. It had been a stressful task at first, working with all those people. However, Fuku had come to realize that if she focused and let herself enjoy her work, then she could get over that, and eventually she did. And now she's glad she did chip in. Seeing people appreciate her cooking did wonders for her self-esteem. After taking in the sight, she dug in as well, letting herself relax and enjoy the fruits of her labor. All right, everyone. Are your bellies filled up? Mina announced to the crowd of kids and 1A in front of her. Because it's time for the next big event. The scavenger hunt. Mina gestured to 4 differently colored eggs beside her, 1 white, 1 bronze, 1 silver, and 1 platinum. A ton of these eggs have been put in different locations all around the forest in every place you could imagine. We have white eggs, which are the easiest to find and are worth 1 point. We have bronze eggs, which are a bit more hidden and are worth 3 points. Sliver eggs are even more hidden than that and are worth 6 points. Then we have the rare gold egg. These things are really hard to find and are worth 10 points. And lastly, we have the ultra-rare platinum egg. There are only 5 of these things and we've put them in super secret locations throughout the forest. Finding one of these babies will net you a total of 50 points. Already, some of the more competitive kids, namely Ken, Kiba, and Fu, were thinking up plans. Now for the rules. Mina continued. First off, when you find an egg, you must put it in your basket. Once an egg is inside another person's basket, you can't steal it. Attacking them is also a no-go. But if they find it first but haven't put it in the basket, you are allowed to steal it. If your basket is full, then you'll need to come back here and empty it out. One last thing. You all have 2 hours to find these eggs. Now as for the contestants. It's gonna be all kids this time. And we're doing it in pairs. That's right, this is gonna be a team effort. Now as for the teams. First, we have Fu and Kei. Let's do our best, Fu. Kei said, raising her hand up for a high five, which Fu promptly gave her. Then Sanson and Yanda. Mina went on. Sanson gave Yanda a big thumbs up. We have Lady Kei and Eri. Mina continued. Don't worry, dear sister. I will lead us to victory. Kiba said, putting her arm around Eri. I'll try my best. Eri responded, giving her a determined look. Ken and Otoko. Mina called. Ready to win? Ken asked his partner cockily. Otoko shrugged. Nara and Koda. Mina went on. I'll do what I can, Koda told her. That's all I can ask, Nara reassured him. And lastly, we have Shiruku and Kyoku. Mina finished. Let's do it, little sister. Shiruka said, patting Kyoku on the head. Alrighty then. Before we begin, first we'll be handing out these handy-dandy earpieces. Mina said as Shoji came forward and handed a set of earpieces out to all the contestants. These will let you communicate with your partner, no matter where you two might be. All the pairs to the earpieces except for Ken and Otoko, as neither of them thought it would be particularly useful, and everyone took a basket. Alrighty then, will all contestants line up at the edge of the forest? Mina instructed. All 12 participants lined up right outside the forest. Hey, Ken whispered to Otoko as he fiddled with his omnitrix. I have a plan. We're going to go our separate ways, and I need you to collect as many bronze and silver eggs as you can. Don't worry about the white eggs, Sis is gonna snatch those all up very quickly. Just focus on looking for whatever silver and bronze eggs you can. I doubt you'll find a gold egg, but if you do, grab those too. Got it? Otoko nodded. Meanwhile, Yonda was whispering something to Sanson. Alrighty then. Ready. Set. Go. Mina said. Nara and Ken slammed down on their omnitrixes. Ken transforming into Wild Mutt and Nara into Xlar 8. But at the same time, Sanson moved back towards Mina and picked up the display eggs before putting them in her basket. And that's 70 points for us. Yonda smirked. What? You can't do that. Kiba objected. Those eggs were just for display. They don't count. Shiruku added. Actually they do. Fu corrected. Mina never said that they didn't count, and isn't the best place to hide something, right in plain sight? That's right, little guy. Mina confirmed. All those eggs counted just as much as the ones in the forest. That means Sanson and Yonda now have a 70-point lead. Curses. Kiba said before grabbing Eri and putting her on her back. Eri post-haste. With that, they charged into the forest along with every pair except for Sanson, Yonda, Ken, and Otoko. As Yonda and Sanson were heading into the forest, Ken jumped in front of them and quickly sniffed her basket before immediately running off in the other direction. Otoko went in a separate direction, trying to follow Ken's order. Ken must have smelled our eggs so that way he could detect them with his smell, including the platinum eggs. Yonda frowned. Sanson. Let's go. And with that, everyone was now in the forest. Nara carried Koda deeper into the forest until they eventually reached a lake. She set him down on the side of the lake before explaining her plan. Look, I'm going to try and gather as many eggs in a little time as possible. I'll be mainly going for the white and bronze eggs. After that, I'll use Ditto to try and search for more well-hidden eggs. But I can't really do lakes all that well. Got it, I'll take care of this, Koda said before making water come out of his hands. The water then floated upwards and formed a bubble around his head. Right, call me when you're done searching the lake. I'll take you to the next one. Nara told him before speeding off to look for eggs. With that, Koda jumped into the lake, the water bubble around his head, allowing him to breathe at least for a while. He then put his hands behind him and shoots out water from them, propelling himself through the lake with ease. Alright, they probably hid a gold or at least a silver egg in here. Not many of them can even look deep inside these lakes. Koda thought as he went deeper and deeper into the lake. They probably hid them at the bottom. Should be easy to spot gold or silver here. Quickly, Koda descended deep down towards the bottom of the lake before landing on its floor. After walking around for a few minutes, Koda eventually saw a small shine of gold. Koda swiftly propelled himself towards that gleam and looked at it closer, seeing that there was in fact a gold egg buried in the lake bed. After digging it back up, Koda took the egg. Alright, now let's head back to the surface to put it in the basket and get some more air. Then I'll look around some more. Meanwhile, Fu and Kei stopped in the forest. Alright, let's get this started, Fu said before he started taking off his shirt. Kei, please turn around. Kei did so but was very confused. What are you doing? I'm about to use mobile shell, so I need to take my clothes off this body, Fu explained as he finished undressing. Alright, keep looking away. Fu then grabbed his hand and ripped it off. The moment the hand came off, Fu fell to the ground and all life left his eyes. At the same time, Fu's hand started regenerating his body, and after about a minute and a half, Fu finished regenerating and got up. Then Kyosei wrapped himself around Fu's old body and got up, puppeting it. Fu then gave him his basket and his earpiece, and Kyosei immediately headed off. Alright, so let me explain the plan, Fu said to Kei as he put on his clothes. Kyodon is going to go around and look for eggs on his own. But he's not smart enough to look for any of the golden or platinum eggs. Right now we should focus on getting as many white, bronze, and silver eggs. After an hour we'll meet up at the starting point to dump our eggs, and then me and Kyodon will bond again. For now you're going to stick with me. Oh, and you can turn around now. Kay turned around and followed Fu as the two headed deeper into the forest. Why don't I look around for eggs by myself so we can look in more areas? Well, I have a hunch I'm going to need you around, Fu explained as they found a cave. Perfect, let's go in. Fu and Kay walked into the cave, heading deeper and deeper inside. Fortunately, 1A had been generous enough to put up torches in the cave so they weren't going in blind. Well, either these torches are here to fake us out or there's an egg in here, Fu noted. After a few minutes of walking, they reached a wider section of the cave where they saw 3 Goliaths and 2 bearing elves waiting for them. Yep, just what I thought, Fu said. He figured that they would have Grim guarding some of the eggs, and what did he see behind this wall of Grim? 2 silver eggs. Good thing I brought you with me. Ha! Kay gave him a confused look before Fu turned her towards the Grim and lifted her visor. All the Grim looked at Kay's beautiful eyes and quickly returned to stone. Oh, that's why you brought me with you. Kay realized as Fu put her visor back over her eyes. Yep, Fu explained as he started walking past all the petrified Grim. That we only have 2 baskets. Oh, Kay said as Fu grabbed the eggs and tossed them into the basket. Let's go, we can't afford to waste even a second of time, Fu told her as he already started walking out of the cave. Not when our competition is so steep. Ken really hoped that his plan worked out. Currently, he was running through the forest, still as wild mutt, with his basket in his mouth, with only a few 2 white eggs he'd found in a bush and a bronze egg he found half buried underground. Of course, he'd noticed a bunch of other eggs around that he could have gone after. In fact, by now he likely could have had at least 1 golden egg. But that wasn't his goal, at least not for now. Ken would memorize the locations of those eggs and go back for them later, but for now his goal was the platinum eggs. Thanks to being able to sniff the eggs in Sanson's basket, he was able to follow the trail of platinum paint that was put on the eggs. So he knew the exact path that the 1A students took to hide these eggs. After running for about 6 minutes, Ken finally found the spot he was looking for. At first glance, it was just a plain, small clearing in the forest. However, if one looked closer, they could see a small X that had been carved in the dirt. It was extremely tiny, and most of the kids would have overlooked it. Ken was one of those kids, however, thanks to Wildmutt's extremely enhanced sense of smell, he was able to detect that 1A had dug up that area and taken a platinum egg down there. Quickly, Ken went over to that spot and started digging. After digging a few feet down, he noticed he'd dug into a cave system, a rather large one from the smell of it. Ken swiftly dug a larger hole that he could fit into and jumped down. After about 7 seconds of falling, Ken hit the ground and realized the cave was way bigger than he first thought. He also assumed it was completely dark down there, but that didn't matter to Wildmutt as his smell allowed him to figure out the locations of things even in the dark. Plus he couldn't see in this form regardless. Ken immediately started running towards where he smelled the platinum egg, chasing its trail through the cave. After running for about a minute, he smelled something approaching him. Or rather, a lot of things approaching him. Ravagers. Ken recognized the small bat Grim that was rushing towards him in massive numbers. Over 100 Ravagers were flying towards him, and he could smell the platinum egg on one of them. Ken smirked and rushed towards the swarm of Ravagers. After a few seconds, they met. The Ravagers rushed past Ken, a few hitting him in the face, but he swiftly shook it off and focused on the egg. Then when the Ravager with the egg flew over him, he jumped up and grabbed it. After landing, Ken quickly took the egg from the small bat monster and then threw it away. He didn't have time to waste, he knew soon he'd run out of time as Wildmutt and he needed to get out of this cave before then, otherwise he'd be stuck in here for 10 minutes. Ken rushed out of the cave, thankfully the bottom of the basket was magnetic so the metal eggs didn't fall out while he ran. He jumped onto the wall, running along it as he made his way up to the roof of the cave and he quickly found the hole he'd made to get in here. Ken crawled on the roof of the cave and quickly rushed out of the hole and back onto the surface. And just in time. BRRR. 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 In a flash of red, Ken turned back to normal and still had the basket in his mouth. Pa! Ken spit out the basket. Ugh! Barely made it out in time. Ken picked up his basket and looked down to see his tracks as Wildmutt. Alright, time for part 2. While Ken waited for his Omnitrix to recharge, he'd follow his tracks and go back for the eggs he had detected as Wildmutt. Ken followed his tracks with a smirk on his face. All right, only 10 minutes and I already have one of the 4 leftover eggs. I am gonna win this. Whoosh. Nara sped through the forest as quickly as she could, stopping at every tree, bush, and rock, stopping to look for a second before moving on if she didn't find an egg. After finding another white egg nestled inside a small crack in a wall and adding it to her basket. All right, that makes 15 white eggs and 1 bronze egg. So that's 18 points. I'm still not anywhere close to Sanson's numbers. Still, and Yonda can't move very quickly, so hopefully they won't be able to get a lot more points. Burrrr. Nara's eyes widened as she looked down at her Omnitrix and saw it was flashing red. Burrrr. 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 In a flash of red, Nara was returned to her human form. She sighed and looked down at her basket. All right, just need to wait and then I can do some searching as Ditto. Hopefully, Koda found some eggs in that lake. Smash. Meanwhile, Kiba just finished smashing apart a massive boulder and found a golden egg hidden inside it. Wow, how did you find that one? Eri asked her as Kiba pulled the egg from the rock and into her basket. I noticed that part of the rock had been melted on top and so I figured something about this boulder was suspicious, Kiba explained. So I punched it to see what would happen. I suppose Mina must have melted a hole into this rock and hid the egg here. A clever idea, but I am far more clever. Sanson and Yonda still have more points than us, Eri said, looking down at their baskets. They collected a golden egg, a silver egg, and 3 white eggs. For now, dear sister. But don't fret. Out of all our foes, Sanson and Yonda are the slowest pair. Kiba told her. You and I shall emerge victorious. I'll look in the front, you look in the back. Kiba handed Eri her basket and turned around, crouching slightly to allow Eri to get on her back. Once Eri was on her back and properly secured with Eri's arms around her neck and Kiba's hands holding her thighs, Kiba ran off. Kiba looking in front of her with Eri looking behind her. Everyone was giving it their all in the longest event so far. Ken was feeling good about his strategy. 1 platinum egg, 1 gold egg, and 2 silver eggs. It was only 20 minutes into the competition and he'd already surpassed Sanson and Yonda's initial score. Of course, Ken figured that they'd found a few more eggs then, but still, at the speed he was gaining points, there was no way he wasn't going to win. Bum datum. He heard his Omnitrix come back online and smirked. All right, time to look for the next egg. Ken quickly selected Wild Mutt and slammed down on the Omnitrix, and in a flash of green, he was once again in his dog-like form. Rah! Ken roared before grabbing the basket with his mouth and smelling the basket. Getting a whiff of the platinum egg. Once he got the scent down, Ken quickly picked up a trail and started running. The trail led Ken to a large lake with a river flowing into it, and then the trail went cold. Ken went to the edge of the lake and looked down inside it. They must have hidden it in this lake. No biggie. Wildma can swim, but if it's as well hidden as the last egg, probably best to wait until I can use Ripjaws. Dying during an Easter egg hunt would be ultra lame. With that in mind, Ken turned around and went to go search for some gold and silver eggs. Nara was quickly realizing there was a problem with her Ditto strategy. Sure, she could look in many different locations at once, but she only had 1 basket. Nara had realized this while she was carrying a bronze and silver egg back to her main self. I should have stuck to using XLR8, Nara said to herself as she ran through the forest. What would happen next would only enforce that idea. Suddenly, Sanson came out of the woods, rushed towards Nara, taking her by surprise and snatching the eggs from her before putting them in her own basket. Hey! Nara shouted in outrage. Sworry not sworry, Sanson said as she slithered away. Ugh! Nara groaned in frustration, looking down at her now empty hands. Hey, Nara. I think I'm done here. She heard Koda say over her earpiece. Oh, all right. Give me 16 minutes, I'll be there. Nara told him. What am I supposed to do for 16 minutes? Koda asked impatiently. I don't know, look around the lake area. Maybe there's some stuff around there. Nara told him. Fine. Koda sighed. Nara sighed as well, not feeling great about this situation. Hopefully Ken is struggling as much as I am. And that's golden egg number 3, Ken remarked as he placed the egg into his basket. He just found the egg buried underground, hidden under a rock. I have never appreciated Wild Mutt more than I have now. Ken smiled to himself. How long has it been? Should be long enough. Better go back to the lake and get ready. With that decided, Ken started running back towards the lake, following his tracks once again. By the time he got back, his quirk was ready to use once again, and his Omnitrix went from red to green. All right, time for Ripjaws. Ken shouted as he selected the form on his Omnitrix and slammed down. In a flash of green, he was Ripjaws. He wasted no time, jumping into the water immediately, keeping his basket on the edge of the lake. Ken quickly descended down towards the lake bed. This egg would be a lot harder to find than the last one, mainly because he couldn't use Wildmutt to track the egg's location. Still, Ken assumed that the egg would have to be somewhere at the bottom of the lake, so he swiftly reached the lake bed and started searching. It didn't take him long to find a person-sized hole on the lake bed. This must be where they put the egg, Ken thought as he swam down the hole. The hole went down, deeper and deeper, taking him very deep down. Eventually, as Ken swam down, he fell out of the water and into a large cave. The cave was pretty circular. It was half flooded, with water going up to Ken's chest, and it was lit by torches that were put up on the cave walls. In other words, it looked like a boss arena. And the boss, a Nucklavi, standing in the center of the arena with a platinum egg tied around its neck. Ah man! Ken groaned as he realized what he'd have to do. Rah, hui! The Nucklavi roared as it shot out its stretchy arm at Ken, punching him and sending him flying into a cave rock. Oof! Ken groaned in pain as he pulled himself up. Oh, this is gonna suck. Oh! Ken ducked as the monster tried to punch him again before diving into the water, transforming his legs into a tail and swimming towards it. The Nucklavi charged toward him and Ken swam out of the way of its charge, causing it to crash into a wall. Ken then swam back towards it and bit at its hind legs. Rah! It roared in pain as the horse half of its body bucked and jumped around to try and shake Ken off, but Ken kept his jaw clamped down on the leg before grabbing onto the upper part of its eggs with his claws. Ken climbed up the Nucklavi with his claws and jaw as the monster kept running around the arena trying to shake Ken off. After a couple of minutes, Ken managed to make his way onto the back of the Nucklavi's horse. The Nucklavi spun its upper half backward, facing Ken. As the Nucklavi raised its arms to attack Ken, Ken leaped forward and grabbed the egg that was around his neck, snatching it with his mouth. Gotcha! Ken thought as he landed in the water and immediately started swimming away from the Nucklavi. Now I just need to get out of here. Ken started swimming towards the waterfall that led to the small cavern that got him here. However, the Nucklavi was in pursuit, charging toward him. With the monster on his tail, Ken had one option, and he leapt at the waterfall, jumping high into the air and using his claws to stick himself to the wall. With Ken stuck to the wall above, the Nucklavi ran right into the wall, shaking the whole cavern. Ken clung to the wall a bit tighter as the cavern shook. I need to get out of here. Ken crawled up the wall and made it into the small cavern, where he proceeded to swim up through it, towards the lake. After a bit more frantic swimming, Ken made it out of the hole and into the lake. Phew! I made it, Ken thought. Brrrr. Oh! Ken thought as he saw his Omnitrix start to flash red. Brrrr. Ken started swimming upwards towards the surface. Brrrr. 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 Splash! Ken made it to the surface of the lake just as he transformed into his human form. Pa! Ken spat out the platinum egg that was still in his mouth. Ugh, that tastes worse than the basket. After trying to spit the taste out of his mouth, he grabbed the egg and started swimming back towards land. A few minutes of swimming later, Ken reached the side of the lake and crawled onto land. Oh! Ken groaned as he crawled to his basket and put the egg inside. I think I'm gonna lie down, Ken said as he rolled over and laid down on the dirt. Kyodon felt very mixed about this mobile shell technique. On one hand, he felt very free. All his life he'd have to be stuck inside someone else, either doing exclusively what they wanted or fighting them for control. But now he could move however he wanted without limitation. There was no delay, no resistance. Of course, he wasn't truly free. This was once Fu's body, but since Fu was no longer in it, it didn't regenerate, and in fact, this rotting corpse gave him much less nutrition, meaning he'd have to eat more of it. So he could only be separated from Fu like this for a few hours. And that brought him to the downsides of this technique. The organs tasted horrible. Fu's organs already didn't taste that great, but at least they were an endless food source that Kyodon could eat without hurting anyone. This was just bad in every conceivable way. And Kyodon just didn't like being separated from Fu. Fu was smart. He led him, taught him, and in return Kyodon helped him with whatever he wanted to do physically. They were a good pair. But now that they were separated, Kyodon felt a bit lost. Fu was decisive, he knew what to do, and if he didn't, he knew the best way to find out. But Kyodon was a baby. A very smart baby, but still a baby. And one that had never really made decisions before. He was still just following Fu's orders right now, go around the forest and find eggs. And he'd been doing that without issue for a while now. He'd found about 16 white eggs and even a silver egg that he'd noticed floating in a pond. But he kept wondering what he was supposed to do if he had to make a choice. What if one of the others tried to steal one of his eggs? Was he supposed to chase them? Let them go? He knew he couldn't attack them, but what counted as an attack? The concept of being free, while exciting in a way, was also very, very scary to Kyosei. But he wondered if it should be. As Kyosei grabbed his 17th white egg with a tendril, he looked down at his hand. Or, rather, Fu's hand. He wondered if, years later, when he knew more and was smarter, would he prefer to be separate from Fu? Or would he rather stay inside him and let him call the shots? Before he could contemplate that for much longer, he heard Fu speak to him using the earpiece. Kyosei, hours up. Head back to the backyard. Fu ordered. Kyosei let out a noise in response to let him know that he'd heard him before immediately heading back to that area. This would be a question that an older, smarter Kyosei would answer. Ken was quickly on his way to his third platinum egg. Problem was, it was in the sky somewhere. Ken had followed the trail of the third egg, however, once he reached a large clearing, he smelled that the egg had been taken into the sky. Meaning once again, he couldn't use Wildma to track its exact location. But this was even worse than the lake because the sky was a significantly larger space to search. And so began what became Ken's most frustrating search yet. He'd turn into stink fly, take to the skies, look around, and come back down before his transformation wore off. This took up a whole hour of his time before eventually he found something. Another huge horde of ravagers. But this was a much bigger horde than the one in the cave. There were so many of them, all flying so closely together that it just looked like a big black ball in the sky. If Ken had to guess, he probably guessed that the egg was somewhere in that black mass of claws and teeth. Most likely somewhere in the center. Not wanting to waste time and risk having to retreat, Ken opened fire, shooting out goop from his 4 tentacle-like eye stalks, rapid fire. The goop started hitting the ravagers, each shot encompassing their tiny bodies, keeping them from flying and making them fall to the ground. Ken took out a couple dozen ravagers this way before they charged at him, screeching and giving off a truly awful noise. Seeing them get closer, Ken flew away from them while continuing to fire at them. Fortunately, they weren't faster than him, so Ken could outmaneuver them pretty easily. As Ken quickly whittled away at their numbers, he noticed a metallic gleam coming from the center of the horde. The egg. Seeing a glimpse of his prize, Ken focused his fire on that area, taking out a few dozen more ravagers before he saw it. He finally hit the ravager with the egg, and he saw it fall out of the cloud of other grim. Ken flew down towards that ravager with the swarm following. Gotcha, Ken said as he caught the grim and the egg. With his prize in hand, Ken flew away from the swarm at full speed. After a couple minutes, Ken finally lost the swarm and breathed a sigh of relief as he landed on the ground. Re. The ravager in his hand cried as it struggled. All right, that's enough out of you, Ken said, before he bit the head off of the ravager, killing it and causing it to fade away, leaving only the egg and the goop. In response, Ken popped the egg into his mouth and swished it around for a few seconds before spitting it back up, goop-free. Gonna have to wash that, Ken said as he plopped it into the basket. I better win after all this. Wonder how Otoko's doing. Otoko was slightly disappointed with his egg count. Very slightly. Altogether, Otoko had collected 15 white eggs, 2 bronze eggs, and 1 silver egg. Considering the contest would be coming to an end soon, that wasn't a very impressive number. Still, Otoko didn't really care about winning. This was more of a fun exercise for him. Most of his disappointment came from not wanting to weigh Ken down. But there really wasn't much he could do. He'd just try his best and hope that was enough. Do you think we'll win? Kyoka asked her partner as they collected their 5th golden egg. I'd like to hope so, Shiruka said, watching a spider come up to her. Their strategy was simple. Shiruku was to commune with the spiders in the forest and they would tell her where the eggs were. They'd found quite a few eggs this way, but not as many as you'd think. I'm honestly feeling a bit popped out, Kyoka admitted. All this walking is a bit much for me. Well then let's take a break, Shiruka suggested. What? Shouldn't we not waste any time? Kyoka asked. This whole event is for fun. If you're exhausted, then you're not having fun, Shiruka pointed out before taking a seat on the ground. Now come, let's gaze at the clouds. With time running out, Ken was frantically running towards the location of the last platinum egg as Wildnut. It wasn't hard to find once Ken started getting even relatively close to it, because the last egg was located at the top of an absolutely massive ice mountain. Courtesy of Todoroki. How did I not notice this before? Ken wondered to himself as he stared up at the mountain that looked like a giant ice spear piercing the sky. Well, better start climbing, not much time left. Ken approached the base of the mountain, dug his claws into the ice, and started climbing up the mountain as quick as he could. It took him 7 whole minutes of climbing to see the top. And there, at the very tip of the mountain, was the platinum egg. Ken grinned as he quickly approached the top, moving closer and closer to the top. And as he reached the summit, smash! Kiba burst out of the mountain, causing the summit to explode as she grabbed the egg. Rahu! Ken screamed in fear as Kiba bursting out of the mountain caused him to go flying away from the mountain, and now he was falling towards the ground. And to make things worse, birararar, 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 birararar. In a flash of red, Ken turned back into his normal form and was now plummeting miles towards the ground. Ahoy! Ken screamed as he fell towards the ground, seemingly to his death, only to be snapped up by a grim griffin that had been standing by to save anyone who fell off. Oh! Ken gave a massive sigh of relief. He'd be disappointed he lost the egg if he wasn't too glad about not dying. All right, everyone, Mina announced using drones. Time is up. Everyone comes back, let's count the eggs. After about half an hour, all the kids finally made it back to the backyard and they all dumped their eggs in their team's basket. You got 3 platinum eggs. Nara shouted in shock, looking at Ken and Otoko's basket. Hee hee. Ken laughed, taking the moment to gloat. Yep. Wildmutt's nose has never been more useful. Let me find all 4 of them. And I would have gotten the last one if Kiba hadn't come out of nowhere and swiped it, almost killing me in the process. Kiba rolled her eyes. As if Caretaker would challenge us to climb a mountain and not have something in place to save us should we fall? And I didn't even know you were there in the first place. All right, everyone, time to count the eggs, Mina said. After a small counting period, it was time to announce the results. Alrighty then. Time to announce the results, Mina shouted. All the participants were lined up in front of her, looking at her with anticipation. And the winners are Ken and Otoko, Mina announced. Yes, Ken shouted at the top of his lungs. Feelings of relief, joy, and exuberance filled him in massive quantities, making him feel lighter than air. We did it. It worked. My plan worked. Ha ha. Yes. Almost everyone else was not feeling that same, with feelings of disappointment going all around. Curses. Kiba pouted before looking to Eri. My apologies, little sister, it appears I did lead us to victory. It's okay. Eri managed a slight smile, grabbing Kiba's hands to try and comfort her. We did our best, and you looked really cool climbing that mountain. I'm sorry I slowed you down. Kyoko apologized to her partner. You might have one if it wasn't for me. Nonsense. I wouldn't have a victory if it meant hurting you, Shiruku told her, rubbing her head. And besides, Ken had 3 platinum eggs, I doubt we would have one. Ugh, sorry, my plans didn't really work out, Nara said to Kota, who looked mildly annoyed. Hey, it's fine, I didn't really think we were gonna win anyway. Not after he got 3 platinum eggs, Kota remarked. Meanwhile, Yonda was petting a saddened Sanson. Don't be upset, sister. Ken had a great advantage and good strategy, not much could have been done. We tried our best, and that's what matters. I'm sure we can beat him in the next competition. Kyosei felt a profound sense of disappointment, and he felt Fu reassure him mentally. Kei, on the other hand, seemed unaffected and was giving Ken a round of applause. Good work, Ken and Otoko. Congratulations. Shoji came over and gave them both a trophy, awarding them for their victory. Ken held his trophy up proudly while Otoko just went the flow. Don't worry, kids. We still have way more stuff to do, Mina told them. After a short break, we'll be moving on to the next competition. Plus Ultra. All right, everyone. Time for the last big event, Mina announced to everyone. The sun was starting to set, and in a few hours, the field day would come to an end. Now everyone, it's time for the ultimate race, Mina said before gesturing over to the starting line she'd set up. At the starting line were 5 contestants. Ida, Achiko, Shiruku, Kiba, and Nara, all looking ready and rearing to go. The rules are simple, stay within the track and don't attack any of the other racers, Mina explained. So without further ado, racers, ready. Nara slammed down on her Omnitrix and turned into XLR8. Set, Mina continued. Full cowling, 15%. Achiko said, activating one for all. Go, Mina shouted. Vroom. Immediately, all the racers began running, going through the first part of the racecourse, a large open stretch of land that lead into the forest. Nara had a head start with Kiba behind her, Ida behind her, and Achiko and Shiruku behind him. For a few seconds it looked like Nara was gonna get a large head start. Kaboom! Until she ran right over a mine. Ah! Nara shouted as the mine blew her back, sending her flying onto her side. Ow wow. And Nara's hit the first obstacle. The minefield. Mina announced over the loudspeaker. Try and keep from getting blown up, okay guys? Ha! As if mines would stop me. Kiba shouted as she jumped up high into the air, jumping over half the field before landing in the middle of it. Kaboom! Ahahaha! Kiba said as she jumped out of the smoke cloud that came from the explosion, completely unfazed by it. Such weak explosions can't touch the Queen of Eternal Darkness. As Kiba was jumping over the minefield, Nara had gotten back up and Ida was also approaching the minefield. Darn it! I'll just have to try and move around the mines. Nara thought, looking down at the field for buried mines before maneuvering around them as quickly but cautiously as she could, with Ida doing the same. Now Achiko and Shiruku approached the minefield and both of them already had a strategy in mind. Achiko jumped up, touching herself and taking away her gravity, allowing herself to float over the minefield, quickly moving past Nara and Ida who had to maneuver around the mines. Meanwhile, Shiruku just jumped up as much as she could before turning around midair and shooting a web at one of the trees in the distance before pulling herself over to those trees on her web line and rushing past Ida, Nara, and Achiko as she did so. Back with Kiba, she had made it into the forest and had big lead on everyone else. She kept running straight until a tree got in her way and then she swerved to the right. Then she stepped on something, tripped, and fell on her face. Pa! Kiba grunted as she got a mouthful of grass. What the heck? She tried getting up only to find that her foot was stuck on something. One of Mina's balls. Looks like Lady K has gotten to the second part of the course. Mina announced. The sticky forest. We've scattered a bunch of sticky traps around the forest, so be careful. Ugh. Kiba groaned as she began to try and pull the ball off her foot. Meanwhile, Shiruka had reached the forest and clung to a tree before jumping to the next one, going from tree to tree and avoiding the ground, which was covered in patches of Mina's balls. Looks like Shiruka's going the high route. But let's see if she can avoid the obstacles we placed up there. Mina commented. As Shiruku jumped to the next tree, she noticed a tape trap up ahead, lines of tape wrapped around 2 trees that would keep her from going forward. She looked around for another route only to find a lot more tape traps around her, and some of the trees also had patches of Mina's balls on them. While Shiruku was looking for a way forward, Achiko made it into the forest and was running through it as fast as she could while scanning for Mina's balls. She made it to a tape trap and jumped over it, however, she realized that in itself was a trap as she found herself about to land on some of Mina's balls. Achiko touched herself, stopping herself in the air before she touched the balls, gliding over them before returning herself to normal gravity and continuing to run through the forest. Meanwhile, Kiba had finally gotten that ball off of her and continued to run forward. This time when a tree got in her way, instead of going around it into a trap, she just ran through the tree, breaking it into splinters as she went on without slowing. At least until she stepped on the patch of balls that was behind it and tripped again. Curses! Kiba shouted. Oh, looks like Lady Kiba having some trouble, Mina commented. But it looks like Ida and Nara have finally reached the forest. Let's see if these two can catch up. Man, never thought I'd be telling Ida to catch up. The landmines were quite the impediment to my speed, Ishido. Ida shouted as he started running through the forest with Nara in front of him as the two moved at a fast, but not super fast speed through the forest, cautiously avoiding the obstacles in the forest. Meanwhile, Shiruka had found her way forward, jumping around from the bases of the trees, sometimes moving to the ground every time some tape or balls got in her way, swiftly moving through the forest. Alright, it looks like Shiruku is taking the lead with some masterful footwork. All 6 of them. Mina commented. Achiko is going a bit slower, that 0G quirk of hers letting her get past a lot of the traps, but Kiba's on her tail. She's finally getting the groove of avoiding the traps. Nara and Ida are gaining slowly. Looks like the traps aren't slowing them down as much as the mines did. Let's see how things play out as Shiruku is approaching the next obstacle. Shiruku jumped out of the forest and to the entrance of a giant maze with 4 different entrances. Welcome to the Great Maze. Try and get through it as fast as you can. But remember, you have to stay on the track, which doesn't include going over the maze. Mina reminded the contestants. Shiruku frowned and she was about to run into the maze, but then she stopped as an idea came to her. And so she stood to the side and waited. Looks like Shiruka's not going in yet. Wonder what she's thinking? Mina asked. Well, whatever it is, it better be good because she's about to lose her lead as Uraraka's approaching maze with Kiba not far behind. Achiko ran out of the forest and stopped for a second to look at Shiruku, who just smiled at her. What are you doing? Waiting. Shiruka simply responded, turning her head to the forest. Ah, here she comes. And Kiba came running out of the forest. She stopped for a moment to look at all 4 paths before taking the one on the inner right. But instead of taking a turning right and following the path, she kept going straight. Smash! 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 Kiba just ran right through the walls of the maze, destroying them as she kept on going. There we go, Shiruka said, before turning to Achiko. Shall we? Achiko ran forward, following Kiba with Shiruka going behind her. Huh, we probably should have thought of that, Mina commented. Whoops. However, as Shiruka passed one of the walls Kiba destroyed, she then proceeded to stop and web it up, meaning that the path was no longer usable to Nara or Ida. Oh, but it looks Shiruka is sealing off the path, Mina noted. Showing no mercy to Ida or Nara. Ag! Nara shouted in annoyance as she still moved through the forest, hearing about what just happened and getting very, very irritated at the sneaky spider girl. Sorry Nara, but I can't let you or Ida catch up. Shiruka thought as she continued through the maze, webbing up the walls as she went, while Achiko and Kiba went through the maze without issue. Well, thanks to Kiba. Her, Achiko, and Shiruka have already made it to the next obstacle. Mina said. At the same time, Nara's made it to the maze, with Ida not far behind. Nara quickly dashed into the maze and started running as fast as possible. At this point, trying to figure out which path led where would slow her down, so she just run through the maze as fast as possible. Ida soon followed behind her, using the same strategy. Meanwhile, Kiba, Achiko, and Shiruka had arrived at a massive field that was covered in ice. Behold the ice field, Mina announced. Careful not to slip. Kiba paid no attention to this warning and attempted to jump over the field. She made it about a quarter of the way before landing on the ice, cracking it and causing her to slip, fall on her face, slid forward until she slipped onto a more fragile piece of ice, which broke underneath her and dropped her into a pit. Curses! Kiba cried as he fell into a deep hole, filled with Mina's balls. Not again. Sorry Lady K, can't brute force everything, Mina said. Achiko did what she normally did, touched herself, and started floating over the whole thing. Shuka meanwhile had a different approach. Shink. She stabbed one of her long pointy legs into the ice and stuck to it, getting a firm footing on the ice, before moving onto it, doing the same thing with each leg as she moved, making it impossible for her to slip. Half a minute later, Nara finished getting through the maze and looked at the long stretch of ice in front of her. If she tried just running over it, she'd end up in a hole, like Kiba. So she thought about it for a few seconds and then came up with an idea. Nara then began to run in a circle. Oh, looks like Nara has a plan, Mina commented. It had better work because Shiruka and Achiko are already almost past the ice field. Shiruku's in first place and gaining a pretty big lead. Wonder what'll happen when Lady K climbed out of the hole. You'll find out right now. Kiba cried as she jumped out of the hole with one of Mina's balls attached to each foot. She landed on the ice and the 2 balls stuck to the icy ground, keeping her from slipping. Kiba then started moving forward, using the balls to keep footing. Ahahaha! Your attempts to trap me have only made me stronger. Behold my endless tenacity. Lady K has found her way. Fantastic, my lady, Mina commented. And it looks like Ida is approaching the ice. Ida had finally ran through the maze and approached the ice, stopping before he stepped foot on it. After looking around, he sees Nara still running in circles, at this point moving so fast she was just an unseeable blur. I see, Ida said, realizing what Nara was doing before coming up with his own strategy. Vroom. Ida crouched down and started revving his engines, getting ready to go as fast as he could. Recipro burst. Whoosh. Ida then ran across the ice at max speed, using the ice to make him move even faster as he sped through the icy field. He ran over a pitfall, but by the time the ice crumbled, Ida was already past it. He was moving so quickly that none of the pits could catch him in time. Vroom. And then, Nara suddenly slingshot herself across the field, using the momentum she had built up to do the same thing Ida did and run across the field so fast none of the pitfalls could trap her. Whoa. Ida and Nara have gone from dead last to first and gaining a massive lead. Mina shouted in excitement. Nara rushed past Ida as both of them ran past the other contestants, leaving them in the dust, as both of them soon cleared the ice field and moved onto the path towards the next obstacle. I knew something like this would happen. Shiruka frowned as she crawled off the ice field and ran after Ida and Nara. Hopefully, the next obstacle slows them down a bit more. Alright, Nara and Ida have already made it to the next obstacle, the Lake of Pain, Mina announced dramatically. Nara and Ida made it to a huge lake that was filled with mines as well as 3 sea felongs waiting for them to arrive. The two went full speed, running on top of the water, trying to get through the lake. Thankfully, the mines here were larger and more spaced out, meaning that the two of them had an easier time running around them. All the Feilongs tried to rush at them, but they were so fast they couldn't reach them, and the two of them had already run across the lake. And they're both already over the lake. Before Shiruko could even get to it, Mina shouted, "Nara in first place, with Ida not too far behind. And they are about to get to the final obstacle. Will these two get to the finish line before the others can even hang on?" Suddenly, Nara's Omnitrix began to turn flash red. "Brrr. No." Nara groaned as she forced herself to slow down, digging her ball-like feet into the dirt, skidding into the ground as she started to slow. "Brrr. Brrr. Brrr." In a flash of red, Nara had returned to her normal form, and her forward momentum caused her to fly forward and land on her face. "Ow wow." Nara groaned as her face impacted the dirt. Meanwhile, Ida began to slow down as his engines overheated and shut down. Ida slowed to a stop not too far away from Nara as his quirk went on cool down. "Unfortunate. I had hoped I could have made it through the last obstacle before this happened. Ugh, if Shiruka hadn't made me go through that stupid maze I could have won." Nara complained as she pulled herself off the ground. "Looks like their quirks gave out before they could reach the end," Mina said. "And now both of them will have to go through the next obstacle without any help from their quirks?" Speaking of that next obstacle, introducing the hill, both Ida and Nara stood at the base of a large, steep hill, and they could see the finish line over at the top. It may have looked like a normal hill, but both Ida and Nara knew it had to be filled with traps. Nara took a deep breath and started running up the hill with Ida watching from behind. She made it about 7 feet before. "Spring!" "Ah!" Nara screamed as suddenly a hidden springboard popped up and launched her into the air. Nara hit the ground back at the base of the hill, hurting her back quite a bit. "Awawa! Ouch!" Mina grimaced. "That looked like it hurt. Be careful, this hill will have you going back down to the bottom over and over again, with traps invisible to the naked eye. Are you okay?" Ida asked Nara, giving her a hand and helping her off the ground. "I'll be fine," Nara reassured him. "Looks like Shiruko's at the lake. And Achiko and Kiba have gotten to the end of the icy path," Mina announced. Back at the lake, Shiruko had reached the edge and was thinking about how she could get over this. "Raha!" One of the Feilongs noticed her and let out a roar, getting the attention of the other two, causing all three of them to start swimming towards her. Shiruka quickly got an idea and jumped up towards them before turning midair and firing a web at them. The web line hit the forehead of the one in the center, and Shiruku pulled herself towards it. She landed on its forehead, and immediately it started trying to shake her off, wagging its head around to try and throw her, but Shiruka stuck to its head, waiting for just the right moment. Then, when it flicked its head upwards, Shiruku jumped at the same time, sending her flying high up into the sky. From there, Shiruka shot a web line at a tree on the other end of the lake and started reeling herself towards it. "Looks like Shiruku flew over that lake in no time," Mina commented. "I wonder how Uraraka and Lady K are gonna deal with it though?" While Shiruku was landing at the end of the lake, Achiko and Kiba approached the other side. Kiba without hesitation jumped into the lake and started swimming, with Achiko following behind her, doing the exact same thing. "Looks like these two are gonna be the only ones to actually go into the lake," Mina said. "Let's see how well they do." The two easily swam around the mines, but the real problem came as the Feilongs approached. One rushed Kiba and tried to headbutt her. Its options were limited as Yami had given them strict commands on what kind of attacks they could and couldn't use. But Kiba swam down and dodged it. That Feilong turned and dived after her, pursuing her under the water. Kiba kept swimming forward as the Feilong chased her, and then the other Feilong comes in and cuts off her path, standing in her way. So in response, Kiba burst upwards, jumping out of the water like a dolphin and trying to go over the Feilong. But the Feilong sifted its body and tail slapped Kiba out of the air and knocking her back to the beginning of the lake. Achiko meanwhile was swimming away from the one Feilong that was chasing her and gaining 18. Full cowling. Akiko shouted, increasing her power as she shot away from the Feilong. While that was happening, Nara and Ida were continuing to try and climb the hill with very little success. Nara made it a quarter way up the hill when suddenly, a few feet ahead of her, a device popped out of the hill and shot down a stream of water towards Nara. "Wait! Ahoy!" Nara screamed as the water swept her off her feet and brought her back down the hill with it. "Oh, come on!" Ida, who was further down the hill, suddenly stepped on some ground that had been slicked with a soapy liquid and tripped, causing him to roll all the way back down to the base of the hill. Looks like Nara and Ida are still struggling to make progress, but Shiruku is approaching the hill now. Let's see if she does any better, Mina said. Shiruku ran up to the hill and started going up, decreasing her speed and moving cautiously. Boing! The spider girl had stepped on a hidden springboard which sprang out of the ground and tried to toss her off the hill, but she just stuck to the board, and when it stopped springing, she jumped off it and continued going up. She kept going and ended up stepping on a slippy patch. She slipped down a little bit, but then she just stuck to the ground and kept herself from going any further down before continuing on and moving around the slippery part of the hill. Oh, that spider stickiness is letting her climb up the hill like it's nothing. Mina shouted. Will she be the one? Can she win it all? Oh, looks like Uraraka is coming up. But Shiruku is already halfway up the hill. Achiko ran up to the hill and looked up. Shiruku was almost already halfway up. There was no way for her to catch up by simply going up the hill. She'd have to think outside the box. Achiko took a few seconds to think of a plan, looking around before her eyes landed on a nearby tree. Quickly she ran over to it and touched it, taking away its gravity before she began to lift. Grrrr. Raff! Achiko lifted the tree out of the ground and threw it into the air, sending it flying high up into the air, sending it higher than the hill itself. Then Achiko touched herself, taking away her own gravity before jumping up towards the tree. Uraraka flipped in midair, positioning herself so her feet landed on the tree. Shooting star! Achiko then launched herself off the tree as hard as she could, sending the tree flying back and her flying forward towards the top of the hill. Oh my goodness! Achiko just flew over the hill and is heading towards the finish line. Mina shouted. Shiruku looked up at Achiko, who was flying towards the finish line, and panicked. It was all or nothing, so she jumped up and shot a web line at one of the poles holding up the checkered banner over the finish line and stared, reeling herself in. It's so close. Achiko and Shiruku are neck and neck. But who's gonna make it there first? Mina screamed in excitement. The two girls kept moving towards the finish line, getting closer and closer, with neither one gaining the edge over the other until... Slunk! One of the traps activated. A wall popped out of the ground right in front of Shiruku's path, stopping her progress and allowing Achiko to shoot ahead and fly past through the finish line. She did it! Achiko Uraraka has won the race, landing herself in first place. Mina shouted excitedly. Congratulations, girl. You've done your class proud. Phew. Achiko let out a breath she'd been holding before touching her fingertips together. Release. Ugh. Shiruku groaned with disappointment as she made her way to the finish line. In second place is Shiruku, Mina announced. Don't look too down, Spider Girl. Second place ain't bad when you look at your competition. This didn't seem to cheer Shiruku up much, as she still held her head down with disappointment, and Achiko gave her a pat on the head and a sympathetic smile. You almost had me there. Had that wall not shown up, who knows what would have happened. Achiko reassured her. And hey, I think Izuku will be proud of your quick thinking. Well, with first and second place decided, let's see who's gonna get that bronze medal. Mina said. Let's see how Lady K is. Dash. Slam. Suddenly, a tree came crashing down a few yards in front of Shiruku and Achiko, with Kiba on top of it. Aha! It worked. Kiba cheered as she hopped off the tree, blood dripping from her hands and mouth. Even if I can't get first, I refuse to be in last. And Lady K takes third. With an incredible feat of strength, Lady K seems to have thrown a tree and rode it all the way to the finish line. Mina explained. Also, what's up with the blood? Well, I couldn't do something like this at little over half my strength now, could I? Kiba stated. So I had to hunt a deer that had wandered into the racetrack and drink its blood to regain my power. Wow. Brutal as heck, Lady K, Mina commented. Well, now with only 2 contestants left, I wonder who will make it to 4th place. Ida and Nara kept trying to make it up the hill, sliding down many times before eventually Ida made it up and crossed the finish line. And Ida gets 4th place. Mina shouted. And with that, the race is over. Yarrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrr tone that was full of exhaustion and disappointment as she flopped to the ground halfway up the hill. "All right, everyone. Make your way back to the backyard and let's wrap this up," Mina explained. By the time everyone made it back, night had fallen and 1A had taken the time to set up for the next event. Blankets were placed around the backyard and dinner had been placed on tables. But before that, they had to wrap up the race. "All right, time for the awards," Mina said. Achiko, Shiruku, and Kiba stood on 3 podiums with Achiko on the highest one, Shiruku on the second highest, and Kiba on the lowest. Shoji came forward with a gold trophy and 2 medals. 1 silver, 1 bronze. The multi-armed boy gifted the trophy to Achiko while giving the silver medal to Shiruku and the bronze one to Kiba. Congrats to Uraraka, Shiruku, and Kiba, Mina said as everyone gave them a round of applause. Meanwhile, on the side, Kaminari walked up to Ida. You okay, man? I'm fine, Kaminari. Thank you for your concern. Ida answered. Although I am slightly frustrated, I can use this frustration as motivation to improve myself further. Yeah, that's the spirit, man, Kaminari said, patting him on the back. Plus ultra. Nara, on the other hand, was not taking her loss quite as well and clapped with a disappointed scowl on her face. Hey, you gonna be okay? Ken asked her genuinely. I'll be fine, Nara mumbled before letting out a long sigh. Just a little sore about losing a race while being the fastest one there. And I could have won if Shiruku didn't make me go through that maze. Yeah, well, she wanted to win. Ken shrugged. But hey, at least you're still number 1 in the classroom, so there's that. You're still top nerd. And you're still number 1 loser, Nara smirked, her mood picking up a bit. There she is. I was worried I'd have to be nice to you for a whole day. Ken fake gagged. Ugh. Just saying it sounds wrong. Doofus. Nara chuckled while rolling her eyes with a smirk on her face. Well, with that over, it's time for the final event. The fireworks show. Mina shouted. Everyone get a plate. And pick a blanket. And get ready for the show. Achiko sat down on her blanket, her legs crossed with a plate of curry and rice beside her, looking up at the night sky. After everyone had gotten their food, they all chose their blankets, sitting in groups, all except for Achiko, who sat alone as curiously no one chose to sit next to her. Until Izuku came up to her with a nervous expression on his face. Most of the other blankets were full and I noticed you were alone. So is it okay if I dash? Of course. Achiko answered, flashing him a smile. More than enough room after all. Thank you, Izuku told her, before sitting down with his bowl of katsudon. The two sat in silence for a little bit, eating their food together and waiting for the show to start. Congratulations, by the way, Izuku said after a while. On your victory, that is. Thanks. Achiko smiled proudly, blushing slightly as well. Honestly, it's all thanks to Shiruku. If she hadn't done everything she did during the maze part, I wouldn't have been able to win. Yeah, I'm really proud of all the ideas she came up with during that race. Even if she only got second place, I'm glad she walked away with a medal. Izuku said with a huge smile on his face. Achiko stared at him for a second, in awe of the expression on his face. The happiness at seeing his daughter doing so well, the pride he felt in seeing all his efforts in allowing her to grow pay off. It was a look that said a lot about Izuku. How happy he was to watch someone succeed and how much it meant to him that he got to help that person. It was an amazing look in Achiko's opinion, and one she wanted to see much more of. Boom. The fireworks started and Achiko was snapped out of her trance by the light and loud noise. Ha! Izuku looked at her, seeing that Achiko had a dazed and slightly confused expression. Achiko, are you okay? Me? Yeah. Achiko stuttered as her face turned red when she realized that she'd been staring at Izuku for quite a while. I'm fine. Hey, look at the fireworks. Let's pay attention to those. Izuku looked at her for a few more seconds, trying to see if she'd be concerned before shrugging it off and looking up at the fireworks with her. And thus, the field day had concluded with a burst of light and color exploding in the night sky, signaling its end. Please go camping with me tomorrow. Now, when Kyoki went to her room late at night after some lessons from Izuku, she did not expect to find Fuku outside her door, giving her a very sudden request. Fuku was shaking slightly after giving her request, looking away from her, but Kyoka couldn't see her face because of the hoodie she was wearing. Kyoka didn't respond immediately, mostly because of the shock that came from the sudden and strange request coming out of nowhere. Why, you don't have to if you don't want to, Fuku added in a small voice, and Kyoka could already hear dejection in her voice, like she accepted Kyoka's rejection before Kyoka even rejected her. Kyoka didn't even really consider rejecting her. Camping sounded like it could be enjoyable, and since it was Fuku, she knew they weren't actually going to go that far away from the house. And more importantly, it would let her get to know Fuku better. Which was something she really wanted. For multiple reasons. Of course, there was the obvious reason, of course, Fuku being one of her sisters, and thus she really should be on more familiar terms with her. And the other reason was that the first step in getting more familiar with people would be getting familiar with the people that live in your house. Okay. Kyoko answered. Did you ask Daddy for permission? I didn't really think you'd say yes, so I didn't do that yet. But I'll go do that now. Fuku said before running off. I'll text you the details. Thank you for saying yes. And just like that, she was gone. Kyoko could only wonder what kind of plans were brewing in that girl's head. But she was too tired to think about that right now, so she put that matter aside and went into her room to go to sleep. Whatever Kyoko may have thought Fuku would do, this was not it. When Kyoko woke up, she found that Fuku had texted her, telling her to meet her in the backyard at the edge of the forest and to be ready for camping. As well as being reassured that Fuku packed everything they'd need for camping and that she quadruple-checked to make sure she didn't miss anything. And when Kyoko got there, she saw Fuku standing in front of a Beowulf that had all sorts of bags strapped to it. Why you came? Fuku's face lit up when she saw Kyoko approach. I was worried that maybe you changed your mind. Kyoko shook her head. No, I wouldn't do that to you, Fuku. Oh. I'm not saying you're the kind of person to do that, it's just, never mind. Fuku shook her head. We should get going. The place I want to go to is pretty far away. Really? Kyoko asked, her eyes widening a bit. It's not too far, I swear. Fuku told her frantically, worried she'd said something wrong. I mean, it's pretty far, but we're still gonna be in our forest. It's just a part of the forest that's a lot farther away from the house. It's fine, I just thought you'd want to stay somewhere closer to the house. Kyoko explained, giving her a confused look. Why do you want to go so far away in the first place? Fuku paused and Kyoko could see the gears turning in her head as she thought hard about something. I'm sorry, but I really want my reason to be a surprise. Fuku's expression then turned crestfallen. But if you really want to know, I'll tell you. Kyoko sighed. She wanted to press for details, but she could see that doing so significantly worsened Fuku's mood. It's fine, you don't have to tell me. I'm sure you have a good reason for wanting to go so far away. I do. I swear. Fuku promised. Just, please wait until tonight. Then you'll see. All right. Kyoko agreed, already wondering what Fuku had in store. She looked up at the Beowulf. It was a rather large one, and it was absolutely covered from head to toe in different bags. She heard Fuku was a hard worker, and that must apply to her planning as well. Kyoko only hoped she could have as much fun as Fuku wanted. All right, let's get on the Beowulf and start going. Fuku said, hopping into the creature, sitting down on one of the two saddles that was put on it. Kyoko followed suit and climbed up to the Beowulf, although she struggled to try and climb onto the creature due to being significantly shorter. Oh, here, let me help, Fuku said, offering her hands, which Kyoko quickly took. With a bit of effort, the two girls managed to pull Kyoko onto the Beowulf and Kyoko got onto the saddle. I'm sorry, I didn't think of that. Fuku apologized. I should have. Please stop apologizing. Kyoko cut her off with a bit of frustration in her voice. Not everything is your fault. I know, I'm still trying to learn that. Fuku admitted dejectedly, looking back towards the front and away from Kyoko. Instantly Kyoko regretted sounding so harsh while also silently cursing Fuku's father for making her like this. Fuku stopped herself before she said, I'm sorry again. I'll try to stop apologizing so much. I know it can be kind of annoying. No, it's okay. I get why you do it, it's not your fault, Daddy does this too. Kyoko pointed out to try and make her feel a bit better. She didn't know how effective it was, and Fuku didn't respond. Instead, she just kept looking ahead. Meanwhile, the Beowulf, knowing the girls were on its back, rose and started running, taking them to their destination. They had been riding on the Beowulf for about half an hour in silence, and by now the earlier awkward tension had worn off and been replaced with something else. Sheer boredom. All right, Fuku, you made things a bit awkward by apologizing too much, but now it's time to start the fun. Fuku told herself. Hey, I have an idea for a game we can play. Fuku told Kyoko before opening up a nearby sack and taking out two cameras. We can take pictures of everything around us and see who gets the better one. Kyoko looked a bit skeptical as she took the other camera. Okay, how do we tell which one's better? You just kind of know, Fuku answered, sounding more than a bit unsure. Kyoko shrugged. It beat just doing nothing. The pink-haired girl started looking around, searching for something to take a photo of. Fortunately, the Beowulf they were riding on, while pretty fast, was not the fastest Grim around, and it was also being weighed down by all the bags, so they could still get a pretty good look at their surroundings as they passed by them. Soon, Kyoko found her shot. It was a small pond surrounded by trees, with two frogs sitting at the edge of it. Kyoko aimed her camera at the scene. Snap! Meanwhile, Fuku looked on the other side, and after a minute of looking, she found a shot of her own. It was of two deer eating something on the ground next to a tree. Snap! Once the two had taken their pictures, they turned to each other and started comparing. Wow, that's a great picture, Kyoku. Fuku gasped when she saw Kyoku's picture. It was far from a perfect picture, it was a bit blurry and out of focus, but that was expected for a child. I think your pictures are a bit better, Kyoka said, taking a close look at Fuku's picture. Fuku's hands were more steady and her eyes more focused, and as such the quality of the picture was quite a bit better. It's not as blurry. Well, that's, Fuku looked at both pictures. Her picture was objective of higher quality, but she liked what Kyoka chose to take a picture of more. I think maybe the blur brings it down a bit. Is it okay to say my picture's better? Kyoka nodded. Yeah, I'll try to make mine less blurry next time. Once again, the two girls started looking around for something to take a photo of. Or rather, Fuku kept looking at Kyoku. Eventually, Kyoka found her next shot. In the distance, there was a red crane standing in a small lake with the sun shining down on it, causing the water to sparkle. Kyoka held her camera and Fuku paid close attention to how she took the photo. Snap! The moment Kyoka took the picture, Fuku tapped on the Beowulf's head, signaling it to stop. Ha! Kyoka looked around in confusion. Why did we stop? Can I take a look at that picture? Fuku asked, receiving a nod from a still confused Kyoku. Fuku took the camera and inspected the picture she took. It was even worse than the last one. The blur was even worse, and because the picture was taken so far away and she didn't zoom in on it, you could barely make out the crane. You're moving too fast, Fuku told her. You have to take your time to get everything just right. Here, hold it up. Kyoka followed her instruction and held the camera up to her face, and Fuku moved her arms to center the shot. Here, since it's so far away, you should press the zoom button right here. Fuku guided her as Kyoku used the zoom feature and focused in on crane. Now try to be as steady as possible, Fuku told her. Just breathe and focus. Kyoka nodded and tried to do as instructed, breathing in out and focusing intensely on the shot. Snap! Alright, let's see how it turned out, Fuku told her as they both took a look at the picture. It was significantly better. A lot less blurry, and they could actually see what she was trying to take a picture of. There we go. That's much better. Fuku praised her, giving her a bright, excited smile. Kyoka, meanwhile, was shocked at how much the quality had improved with just a short lesson and a few tips. Wow. You're really good at this, Fuku. Ha! Fuku blushed intensely at the sudden compliment. And no, I'm just a beginning too. You should see some of the pictures people take online. They're much, much better than mine. It's just that I've gotten used to taking pictures of stuff. Because I like to draw and paint stuff, so sometimes I need to take pictures so I can paint it later. I see. Kyoka thought about that. Maybe she should get into photography as well. It was strangely satisfying getting a good shot, and she did like painting as well. With her mission complete, Fuku tapped on Beowulf's head and they started moving again. Alright, let's keep going with the game, Fuku said, picking up her camera. Okay, Kyoka said, sounding a bit more determined and a bit more into it than she was before, wanting to put these lessons to use. Once again, the two girls started looking around, trying to find the next thing to take a picture of. Oh! Fuku gasped as she saw a small hair coming out of its hole. She quickly pulled up her camera, lined up the shot very swiftly, and took a picture. Snap! Meanwhile, Kyoka found a bird sitting in her nest with her babies. Kyoka did what Fuku told her. She raised her camera to her face and took a bit of time to center the shot, zoomed incorrectly, and... Snap! The two quickly turned to each other and immediately started comparing pictures. Oh, that one's so cute! Fuku praised the moment she Kyoka's picture. So yours? Kyoka said, looking at the hair in Fuku's picture. I think yours is a bit better, Fuku said. It has 3 baby birds. See? I win. Kyoka asked her. Fuku nodded enthusiastically. Good job. Kyoka smiled, feeling a sense of pride. She looked at her picture and she just felt good. She'd done a good for her age job at capturing a really cute scene on camera. You know, this is more fun than I thought, Kyoka admitted before holding up her camera and giving Fuku a smile. Let's keep going. And Fuku's heart soared. And so the two continued to take pictures for the next hour of their journey. However, the game ended when they finally arrived at the campsite. We're here, Fuku said excitedly as the two looked around at the campsite Fuku chose. It was next to a big lake and under the shade of a massive nearby tree. All in all, a very nice campsite, but Kyoka still wasn't sure why they had to go this far away to go camping. Daddy knows we're out here, right? Kyoka asked, a bit concerned about how far they were now that she realized just how much time had passed. Fuku nodded. Of course. And there are a ton of Grimm around to protect us. And there's even a seer over there. She pointed up at one of the trees and saw a seer latched onto it. Okay, just wanted to be sure, Kyoka said, her hesitation falling away. So, what do you want to do? Well, first we should probably unpack and get everything set up, Fuku said, looking at all the bags she brought. I really did bring a lot of stuff, didn't I? You don't have to help if you don't want to. No, I'll help, Kyoka insisted. Are you sure? It's gonna be a lot of work, Fuku added, but Kyoka just nodded. Okay, let's get started. After about 20 minutes, the two finally finished setting up camp. The most notable thing was the big tent, which was at the center of their camp. On the outside, it looked like a normal gray tent, but on the inside, it was actually see-through. This was something Fuku had asked for specifically from Izuku. The next most notable thing was the small table and two folding chairs, with a cooler next to it as well as a crate with some snacks in it, but not much food, Kyoku had noted. There was also a small grill close to the table and some seasonings and other things used for cooking. Lastly, there were also some chests filled with various things that Fuku had packed. So what do we do now? Kyoku asked. Maybe it'd be good to go for a swim? Fuku suggested. I brought swimsuits, but can you swim? Kyoka shook her head. Can you? Yeah. I was worried that if I was being chased that I might need to swim away if I got to a lake or something. Fuku admitted. Do you want me to teach you? Kyoka nodded. Yes, please. Okay, well then let's get changed. Fuku looked up at the seer. Please look away. We're going to get changed. The seer turned away, allowing the girls some privacy. After a quick change into their bathing suits, they began to enter the water. It's cold, Kyoka noted as the two slowly walk into the water. She was wearing a pink polka-dotted white swimsuit with a frilly skirt on the bottom. Yeah, but you get used to it, Fuku reassured her. She was wearing a plain purple swimsuit and was guiding Kyoku into the water by holding her hands. Now whatever you do, stay calm. Freaking out is really bad. So just remember, I'm here. You know, you're a lot cooler today than you normally are, Kyoka told her, giving her an appreciative look. Once again, Fuku's face exploded into a blush. WWW, what are you talking about? Emmy. Cool. That's, oh look, we're getting deeper into the water. Let's start focusing on teaching you how to swim. True to her word, they were approaching a depth where Kyoka could no longer walk and would have to start actually swimming. Fuku could still walk around though, due to her being taller. Alright, now let's practice floating first, Fuku said, regaining her composure while she recalled the way her instructors taught her. First, just lie back and stay calm. A person's body floats on its own, so all you need to do is let the water lift you up. Kyoku let Fuku position her backward until she was lying back in the water with Fuku's hands holding her up, and she felt a little nervous. Okay, I'm going to let you go now. Are you going to be okay? Can you stay calm? Fuku asked her, also feeling a bit nervous. Kyoka took a deep breath and summoned her courage. I'll be okay. Alright. And with that, Fuku slowly let go of Kyoka's body. The moment she did, Kyoka feared she would sink. The feeling of not having anything physically underneath her to hold her up was a bit frightening, and she had to command herself not to move. Not to ask Fuku to hold her again. She had to hold on tight to her courage. And it paid off, as a few moments later she noticed she wasn't sinking. The water was pushing her up rather than dragging her down. It was still a bit scary to have nothing solid underneath her, but for the most part she could breathe a sigh of relief. Alright, you're doing it. Now just keep doing this for a few minutes so you can get used to it, Fuku explained. Then we can move on to the next thing. The next 2 hours were spent teaching Kyoka how to swim. Fuku instructed her patiently, and Kyoku appreciated how thorough she was. It helped her understand things easily, and whenever she did something wrong, Fuku was quick to correct her. It was thanks to this that after an additional hour of practice, Kyoku was able to swim, kind of. She still wasn't very good at it, moving very slowly and inefficiently in a way that would quickly exhaust her, but she could move through the water without sinking, and that was major progress. But after all those hours of learning, Kyoku was pretty tired, so Fuku carried her on her back as she swam back to shore. You really are amazing, Fuku. Kyoka praised her sister as she clung tightly to her back. Fuku stopped suddenly and her face turned red again. I mean, not really. I'm sure Zuko could have taught you a lot better than I could have. He's a lot smarter than I am. Kyoka nodded. But Daddy's a lot older than you. You're only 2 years older than me. And you know so much more than me. And you're a really good teacher. For a while after that statement, there was silence. Until Kyoka heard something start hitting the water. She looked down and saw teardrops that had fallen from Fuku's face, falling into the water, creating small ripples as they landed. Fuku! Kyoka picked her head up and looked down at Fuku with eyes full of worry. She heard sniffles coming from her and a very, very quiet sobbing noise. Meanwhile, Fuku was trying to hold it together, trying to stop the tears flowing out of her eyes. I'm sorry. It's just, sometimes it still feels like a dream. Or like I'm inside an ice sky. The months I've spent here sometimes don't feel real. I'm worried I'm going to wake up one day and everything will go back to normal. I won't have Eri or Kei or you. No one will tell me I'm amazing. No one will tell me I'm useful. I'll go back to being Fukunoko. Child of misfortune. Kyoko's embrace grew tighter. Her previously exhausted body suddenly felt hot with rage. That's never going to happen. That terrible man can never, ever hurt you again. Never. Our nightmares are over. We've suffered enough already. Fuku paused for a minute before responding. I hope you're right. If this was a dream, I don't think I could bear ever waking up from it. After getting out of the lake and drying themselves, they decided to try a more relaxing activity. That being painting. Fuku set up some stands and some canvases and put some seats in front of them, and the two sat down and got ready to paint. So what do you want to paint first? Kyoko asked. Well, I was thinking we could make paintings out of those photos we took, Fuku said, grabbing the cameras the two of them had used to take the photos. Kyoko nodded. Sounds good. Fuku handed over one of the cameras and the two got to work, painting quietly by the lakeside. Kyoko found the experience quite pleasant. It was so quiet. She loved her new home and family, but sometimes she wished it wasn't so constantly noisy. Like all the time. Right here, the only noise came from the wind and the sound of their brushes, and this allowed Kyoko to fully focus on her painting. Currently, she was working on recreating her picture of a crane in a lake. And she thought it came out pretty well. A mostly blue painting with a single white thing that somewhat resembled a crane. Okay, it wasn't all that great, but Kyoko understood that people her age weren't about to create the next masterpiece. Doing something well came with practice, and Kyoko was only 6. And Kyoko was confident in that notion until she looked over at Fuku's painting. Now Fuku's painting wasn't a masterpiece, but it was leagues better than Fuku's. Fuku had chosen to recreate her picture of a rabbit coming out of its hole. It had perspective and detail, and the rabbit looked 100% like a rabbit. How are you so good at this? Kyoko asked in shock. Good? Well, I wouldn't say I'm dash. Before Fuku finished her sentence, she looked at Kyoko's painting and quickly decided to stop that sentence right there. Well, I had lots of practice. Pretty much all I did was read, paint, draw, write, and cook. And I stopped cooking a whole lot once. He locked me in my room, so I started painting and drawing more. So I'm sure if you practice you'll make paintings even better than this one. Actually, here, let me show you something. And that's how you draw with perspective, Fuku explained. Fuku brought out a new canvas and showed her how to paint a lake properly without just making the whole canvas blue. Now you can paint some trees and you can make the crane look like it's coming out of the water, Fuku said. Watch. Kyoko watched Fuku intensely as she started painting. It was a very slow process as Fuku hesitated before every stroke, looking over the painting each time she did anything, as if constantly judging herself, trying to discern the best course of action to properly paint the picture. Her hand was absurdly steady, something Kyoko had taken notice of but now could fully appreciate. There were no twitches, no involuntary movements, no awkward lines. Fuku painted trees and the sun before finally painting the crane. There, now if you really want to improve it you can add some details, Fuku said. You'd be really surprised how much some lines can make a picture feel more alive. She was not wrong. Fuku added some very carefully painted lines and it made the whole painting much, much better. So, did you understand what I was doing? Fuku asked her. I think I do? Kyoko understood what Fuku told her, but she wasn't sure if she could actually put it into practice. Can you help me practice? Of course. Fuku nodded, putting her painting aside and setting up a fresh canvas. Let's just try to get this crane painting right. Just remember what I did and try to do it again. If you start messing up, I'll help guide your hand. Just try to focus. Kyoko nodded and she picked up her brush. She took a deep breath and started painting. And you're done, Fuku said, putting her hands together and looking happily at the picture. Kyoko looked over her work inquisitively. Overall, it was a vast improvement on her original painting by basically just being a worse version of Fuku's painting. Although given how good Fuku's painting was in her mind, making a worse version of it was still something she was amazed by, and for the most part she'd done it herself. Fuku had helped her out, of course, guiding her hand for a few seconds here and there, putting her on the right track, but this was still 70% her own doing. So do you want to try doing one on your own now? Fuku asked her. Kyoko nodded, eager to see how well she'd manage on her own. Alright, well let's just see how you do, Fuku said encouragingly. After painting for about an hour, they decided to move on to something else. Archery. Twang. Darn. Kyoka pouted as she saw her arrow fly past the target and fall to the ground a few feet away. Fuku had set up a target very close to Kyoka so her tiny arms could muster enough force to actually hit the target and taught her how the basics of how to use the bow. However, Kyoka wasn't having much luck in actually hitting the target at all. Her arrows flew to the sides, stopped before they could hit the target, and even sometimes went backward. She'd been able to graze the side of it once, but never did she actually hit it on her own. The only arrows that hit the target were the ones that Fuku had helped her with. But for some reason she couldn't hit it and she was beginning to get really frustrated. Fuku, seeing her frustration, began to get nervous that she may have made a mistake in her planning. Well, maybe you should imagine the target as something else. Something you hate. Like your parents. Oh, maybe I shouldn't have meant dash. Twang. 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 Thunk. 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 Fuku was cut off by Kyoku, rapidly letting off arrows and shooting them at the target in rapid succession. About half the arrows missed, but the other half impacted the target, most of them landing around the inner circle, but one of them hit the edge of the center. Kyoka smirked before looking over to Fuku. Can I have more arrows, please? Needless to say, Kyoka's accuracy improved dramatically for the rest of their practice session. All right, and that's how you hook the bait, Fuku said after demonstrating. Putting the bait on both hooks. Now, we just have to throw the line in. Kyoka nodded and watched as Fuku sat down in one of the folding chairs she brought and grabbed her fishing rod. She was learning a lot today. And while none of these things is anything she had wanted to learn, she was appreciative nonetheless. All right, just do what I do, Fuku instructed her. Raise your pole back over your head. Fuku raised her pole back over her head with Kyoka doing the same. And then just throw it over. But keep your grip tight so you don't throw the rod. Fuku continued. Like this. Fuku threw the rod over her head and the hook flew into the water. See? Kyoka nodded. She tightened her grip around her rod as hard as she could before throwing it, tossing the hook into the water. Good job. Fuku praised her, giving her an encouraging smile. There was a light in Fuku's eyes that Kyoka hadn't seen before. A sense of joy Kyoka couldn't quite place the source of but was appreciative of it nonetheless. Now we just wait? And so they did. They just sat there with nothing but silence between them for a little while before Fuku worked up the courage to speak. So, you don't have to answer this if you don't want to, but what happened back when you went outside with Yami and Yanda? Why were you so upset when you came back? Kyoka frowned and looked away from her, not responding for a while as she considered what to even say. Part of her, a very significant part, wanted to refuse. To tell Fuku she didn't want to answer. But another part of her remembered that she needed to open up to other people if she wanted to get better. And maybe, just maybe, she learned something else from Fuku. They wanted to know why I don't like people very much. Kyoka answered. And the reason was because I'm angry and I'm jealous. I'm angry and jealous because of how everyone else is with their parents. And even though I have a new daddy now, one that loves me, I still feel these things and I feel ugly. She heard Fuku finish. Kyoka's eyes widened and she turned back to Fuku and looked at her in shock, only to find a very, very sad expression on her face. You feel ugly and ungrateful and like you should be happy, and because you're not, that there's something wrong with you. Fuku continued, her tone was cold and that light in her eyes had vanished completely, replaced with a dull sadness that left Kyoku agape. How did you know? Kyoko asked, her voice so quiet it was pretty much a whisper. Because I feel like that too, Fuku responded, her voice still cold, and she looked to be staring at her reflection in the pond. Back when I was still with him, I'd read books about people with loving families, best friends, or lovers. And I'd feel great at first. I'd put myself in their place and I'd just imagine I was them. And I'd feel amazing. Until I heard my father call me. Then I'd remember who I really was. That I had no friends. Or loving family. And I felt angry and jealous. At least for a little bit before all the fear washed it away. Kyoku was just looking at her in shock because while not exactly the same, eerily similar to her own experience. And she'd never expected someone as timid and gentle as Fuku to feel anger and jealousy like she did. She seemed too nice for it. And now I still feel like I'm not anything like the characters in my books or manga or anime. Fuku continued. Even though I have nice people who care for me, I finally have a loving family, some things are just wrong. I can't call Izuka my father. Even he's basically the father I've always wanted, I still can't call him that because when I think of the word father, or dad, or anything like that, I still think of him. The way she said him, her tone suddenly shifted to become bitter and angry in a way that Kyoka never thought she'd hear from her. He's still here, not in person, but part of him is still with me. Still trying to hurt me. Fuku's voice was trembling with rage and sadness, and tears were beginning to form in the corners of her eyes. I can still hear him sometimes, judging me. Insulting me. Sometimes I can even feel him hitting me. I don't even know how that's possible, but it is. He can't touch me anymore, but everything he did still happened. It made me into this. He made me not able to call someone father. He made always afraid that someone's trying to hurt me. He made it so I can't love myself. And thanks to those candies, I know exactly what he took from me, and I hate him. I just hate him so much. And I dash. Fuku was cut off as suddenly Kyoka launched herself at her, enveloping her in a tight embrace before she started sobbing into her shirt. Kyoku, what's wrong? Fuku quickly put aside her own feelings and looked down at Kyoka with great concern. Did I do something? Oh, or say something? What's dash? I am. Kyoka struggled to speak over her tears and sniffles. It sounded like she was choking on her own words. I'm not alone, I'm not alone. I'm not alone. Kyoka didn't sound sad. She sounded happy. Overjoyed. Those words hit Fuku and hit her hard. I'm not alone. She was crying because she finally found someone who understood her. Who felt similar to how she felt. She was crying because she wasn't an outlier. And now Fuku was crying for the same reason, tears slowly falling out of her eyes. We're not alone. We are not alone. In a house full of trauma, Fuku always felt like she handled it the worst. Eri and Kei, despite going through things that were even worse than what she went through, seemed fine for the most part. Way better than her. Oftentimes she'd lament being unable to let go of the past like Eri and Kei seemed to be able to. She felt like she was being pathetic. No one else was like this, so why was she this way? But hearing that someone else shared her feelings was liberating. And so she dropped her fishing rod and held Kyoka tightly, and the two embraced for a while. Fuku didn't know how long the embrace lasted, maybe minutes, maybe hours. She just lost track of time. They only separated when they heard a quite concerning sound. Grrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrr this? I'm hungry. Kyoko admitted, blushing with embarrassment at something like this interrupting such an important moment. Oh, Fuku's eyes widened and her face went white. I was planning to cook up the fish that we caught. Kyoko's eyes also widened as she realized that because of what happened, neither of them had caught any fish. Oh. After getting Kyoko some of the snacks she'd brought along, using those to hold them over, the two continued fishing. I got one. Kyoko shouted as she started reeling it in as fast as she could, pulling the small fish out of the water and into the air where it flopped around, struggling on the hook before Kyoko grabbed it. More food. Great job, Kyoko. Fuku praised her before she got a tug on her own line. Oh. I'm getting one too. Fuku started reeling it back, and with some effort she pulled the fish out of the water and into the air. Whoa. It's as big as my arm. Kyoko said, looking at the fish in awe as Fuku put it in her bucket. The two had been at it for quite some time now, pulling in fish and placing them in two separate buckets. It wasn't a competition given that Fuku had more experience, it was more so that way Kyoko could look at her bucket and say that Esachi was the one who caught those fish. It was to make her feel proud. And it worked too. Sometimes Fuku would see her stare back at her bucket and smile. And that made Fuku smile along with her. But in between hooking and fish, they would talk. So, do you hate people who haven't had bad things happen to them, sometimes? Kyoko asked her as she threw her line back in. I used to, just a little bit, Fuku answered. But it always felt wrong to do that. It's not like they ever did anything bad to Fuku, so Fuku shouldn't want bad things to happen to them. So whenever I used to feel like that, I just think about my books and manga. Kyoko looked up at her in awe as if she'd just said something revolutionary before going into thought. Can you give me some manga so I can do that? I really want to stop being so angry at people. Of course. Oh, I know this one about a fox girl that will absolutely melt your heart. Fuku told her. Her face lit up with excitement as she began to rattle off titles she'd used to comfort herself over the years. They stopped their talk momentarily to reel in more fish before moving on to another topic. How do you move on so quickly? Kyoko asked next. You weren't able to go out of your room at first and now you can do all this? But me. I haven't moved on much. Well. I wouldn't say I moved on. Fuku admitted with a pout. I'm still really scared of doing new things. Honestly, I was scared you'd reject me when I asked you to go camping. It's hard. Really hard to force myself to do all this. But I need to do it. When I ate that candy, I finally knew what it felt like to not hate myself. And I want that. I want it more than anything in the whole wide world. I always have, even before I ate that candy, but now I want it even more. So I need to work really hard to stop being afraid and do what I need to do to feel that way again. Fuku looked down at Kyoku, who looked up at her with eyes that sparkled with amazement. And Fuku felt her heart fill. It was now that Fuku started to really feel that Kyoku was her younger sister. Eri, Kei, and Kiba always felt like they were her older sisters, even though she was older than them. Because in Fuku's mind, an older sister was one that guided and taught their siblings. One that helped them through difficult times and through experiences they'd already been through. And while Fuku had done her fair share of that with Eri and Kiba, but those were outliers. For the most part, those girls had guided Fuku through her recovery. They helped her move forward when otherwise she'd be paralyzed with fear. But right, or rather, thought the entire day, Fuku had been guiding her. Showing her how to do new things and giving her advice on how to push forward. It felt overwhelmingly amazing. A bit scary, she was concerned she might say something wrong, but she literally just said she had to push past things like that, so she did. When you have to do something really scary to get what you want, just think about how badly you want it, Fuku advised, before flashing her a bright grin. And don't be afraid to rely on others for help. Honestly, I don't know how far I could have gone if Eri and Kei weren't there to help me. If you feel like something's too much for you, you can call Eri, Kei, Izuku, or me, if you want. Kyoka smiled back at her and nodded. Fuku was truly glad she decided to go on this trip. Sis. Kyoka looked like she was in heaven at the moment with a plate of fish in front of her and some of the food already in her mouth. It's so good. Fuku was working on a grill nearby, cooking up the fish they caught. Are you sure? I didn't overcook it or put on too much seasoning. Kyoka shook her head. No. I love it. I'm glad, Fuku said, giving her a relieved smile. I haven't cooked much on a grill, so I was worried I might not do it right. You worry too much, Fuku. Kyoka reassured her, shaking her head before stuffing her face with more food. You're really talented. I think you know more stuff than anything at home except Daddy. I doubt that. Fuku quickly denied it. Besides, there's no way I'm anywhere near as amazing as Kei or Eri or Kiba. Those guys are just on another level. Kyoka didn't quite agree with that notion but wasn't really able to find a way to argue against it, so she just kept quiet and kept stuffing her face, and soon she forgot about it altogether because the fish was that good. As Fuku was finishing up her own plate of food, she noticed the sky was beginning to change color. Oh! Kyoku! Quickly come here. Kyoka looked up from her food and saw Fuku walking towards the edge of the lake. Curious, Kyoka got up and followed her, bringing her plate with her. The two sat down at the edge of the lake, with their plates set down on their legs. And soon Kyoka saw why. Wow! This was not Kyoko's first sunset, however, it was her first time seeing the sunset over a lake in a forest. Seeing the sun slowly go down behind the mountains as the sight reflected in the crystal-clear waters of the lake was one of the most beautiful things Kyoka had ever seen. Kyoka couldn't even finish her sentence as soon her mind just focused on taking in the sight in front of her. Fuku herself was overwhelmed with joy, both that the sight was as awe-inspiring as promised and that she wouldn't disappoint Kyoku. The two just stared at the sunset for a while until the sun finally went down. And when the sun went down, the stars came out. Kyoka gasped when she saw them. She'd obviously seen stars before, but never as clearly as now. Thanks to living so close to the city. But now she could see what the sky looked like without all the light pollution and witness the as they were meant to be, and the reflection of the lake made it all the more beautiful. How are there so many? Kyoka managed to ask. Nara said something about all the lights in the city making it harder to see the stars. So if you go far enough away, you can see them like this. Fuku explained. It's really amazing, right? Kyoka just nodded, her eyes glued to the sight in front of her. Eventually, the two managed to continue eating, but their heads still remained tilted upwards as they stared at all the different stars in the sky. Eventually, the two of them got tired and retreated into their see-through tent. Wrapped up into their sleeping bags, they continued to look up at the night sky. Did you have fun today, Kyoku? Fuku asked her hopefully. To anyone else, the answer to that question would be obvious. But Fuku just had to make sure in order to shake her fears completely. Much to her relief, Kyoka nodded her head. Today was amazing. I learned so much, I ate great food, and I got to see so many amazing things. And it was all thanks to you. Fuku felt like her heart was going to burst from joy after hearing that. Her face went red and she felt a smile form on her face. Thank you. I tried really hard to plan everything out. Kyoka looked over to Fuku and gave her a joyful smile. Can we go out again sometime? And can we bring Eri and Kei? Of course. That sounds wonderful. Fuku quickly agreed. Everyone's been through so much. And I know we're gonna have to go through some hard things in the future too. So I want to make as many good memories as possible. I'm hoping that if we make enough good memories, it'll make the bad ones hurt less. What do you think? I think that sounds amazing. Big sis. Kyoka responded. Well, it looks like they hit it off, Fu commented as the two of them looked at them through the seer. I know, and I couldn't be happier about it, Izuka said, sitting in bed, ready to go to sleep. Suddenly, Izuku's phone started vibrating on his nightstand and Izuku leaned over to see who it was. Oh, it was Nami. Well, I knew this was gonna happen eventually. Izuka sighed as he picked up and answered the phone. Hello Nami, it's been a while. Hey Midoriya. It really hasn't it? Nami responded. So I just woke up from a meeting, I just got out of a meeting, and speaking of things it's been a while since, guess what, it's time for you to meet your new highly dangerous bundle of joy. I guess it's been long enough. Izuku readied himself to accept a new face to the house. Alright, tell me about them. Izuku was very nervous about this next child. And it wasn't because she had a dangerous quirk. They all had dangerous quirks. And this one wasn't even uncontrollable. To give more details, this child was named AKA. And her quirk was called assimilation. Assimilation was a mutant-type quirk that turned AKA's entire body into a kind of metallic clay-like substance. Her body could change shape to a minor degree, not full-on shape-shifting like Sanson. She could also regenerate if her body had enough nutrients. But the main ability of assimilation was its ability to allow AKA to take over another person's body and mind. All she had to do was insert any part of her body into a person's bloodstream through a cut of some kind. It could be a small piece of herself that she could rip off or her entire body if the cut was big enough. Then this would allow AKA to take over that person's body and mind, giving her full access to their abilities, and depending on how big of a piece of her in that person, she can even access their quirk factor and start to mutate it, causing changes in a person's body and quirk. She could take over as many people as she wanted, adding them to a sort of hive mind. It was a very dangerous quirk, but one that was also controllable. Normally, she'd just be under government watch without them feeling the need to take her away into the DOC program unless she proved to be dangerous. Which she did, because her mindset was almost as dangerous as her quirk. AKA had lived in a small town near the mountains that had been utterly destroyed by villains, leaving very survivors. None of which were AKA's parents, leaving the poor girl alone and devastated. And this had a terrible scar on her mind. This was seen when she was taken to an orphanage which was unfortunately run by a less than suitable director who was rather abusive towards the children. Thanks to the villain attack, AKA now had an unyielding hatred towards villains and anyone who acted like a villain. And so, while most people would despise a man who abused children, AKA's hatred was on another level, shown by when she convinced some of the other children to cut the director with a knife, allowing her to use her quirk to take over his body. She then proceeded to torture him for several days, forcing him to harm himself before giving control of the body back to him temporarily so he could feel the pain. This torture lasted for a week before AKA decided it was enough, forced him to gather up evidence of wrongdoing, and made him turn himself in. Naturally, the authorities realized something wasn't quite right and quickly discovered that AKA was controlling him, and after extracting the piece of her from his body, he immediately told her what AKA had done. Once that was revealed, AKA was deemed too dangerous to be part of normal society at the moment and thus was taken into DOC's care. When confronted about her actions, AKA insisted she was in the right, saying that the only reason she didn't torture him for longer was that she was concerned he would die. So at the very least, she drew a line at that point. Although she stated that she didn't particularly care if the man lived or died, rather she didn't want to be labeled as a killer. It was clear the incident had traumatized her quite severely, and it was going to be hard to convince her that perhaps villains didn't need to be tortured or treated like they weren't human. Especially since that mindset wasn't necessarily popular. Izuka sighed as he looked down at one of the other documents he had to sign. It was a related document to accept a shipment of what was called Vegeta Formula, Vegeta being short for vegetables. This formula had one purpose: releasing a person from AKA's control. Because normally, trying to release someone from AKA's control would be almost impossible in a fight. The only way to do so other than this formula would be to remove or destroy the piece of AKA that was in their body. However, a way around that was by exploiting AKA's main weakness. Vegetables. She was deadly allergic to vegetables to the point where eating them could actually be fatal to her. As such, if a person under AKA's control were to consume a vegetable, it could kill the piece of AKA that was inside them, thus freeing them of AKA's control. This formula was made to streamline the process. Just throw a bomb filled with this formula at someone AKA was controlling, it'll explode into a gas, and once they breathe it in, that person will quickly be freed of AKA's control. Of course, this gas was very dangerous to AKA and would need to be kept away from her main body. The only reason Izuku felt comfortable accepting this gas was because of the potential danger AKA possessed by living here. Izuku didn't like looking at children as potential villains, but he couldn't turn a blind eye to the possibility of AKA taking control of the other children here, and that would be disastrous. I hope I never have to use this. Izuku shook his head as he signed the paper. Hopefully, everything just works out until I can get them into therapy. Izuku waited outside of the house with Achiko beside him. I'm sure she'll be fine. She hates villains and there are no villains here. Achiko reassured him. Not yet. Rembernies. Izuku pointed out. Achiko's eyes widened. Oh God, I forgot about her. Oh, I am sure you'll figure something out. I hope so, Izuku said as he saw a car drive through the entrance gates and up to the house. The car stopped and the back door opened. At long last. I am free. He heard a young feminine voice say. For some reason, the voice sounded like something you'd hear come out of a villain on an old dubbed anime or like a Power Rangers villain. And then he saw her. Despite being 9 years old, the girl was about as short as Kyoku. Her entire body was metallic silver, looking like a mixture of liquid metal and clay. Her eyes were pure blue, with no pupils or anything, just blue. She wore a mostly yellow and blue dress with some red stripes thrown in, as well as a hairband with similar colors wrapped around the top of her head, which was shaped into a weird tail/ponytail thing that drooped down from her head to her back. Yes, excellent, AKA said as she exited the car with a sinister grin on her face. From here, I'll become the most powerful hero in history. Ahahahaha. Never in their lives did either Izuku or Achiko think that they'd hear someone proclaim they wanted to be a hero in a cartoonish villain monologue. This place just gets weird and weirder, huh? Achiko thought to herself. Well, I hope we can provide everything you'll need to achieve that goal, Izuku said as he walked over to the small girl and gave her a friendly smile. AKA looked up at him with an inquisitive glare, putting her finger under her chin as she sized him up. So you are the caretaker of this facility, yes? You're younger than I expected. Well, no matter. I'm sure you heard about the last caretaker that dared to commit evil acts in front of me. Izuku nodded. Yes, I did. And I'm glad you brought him to justice. I'm not particularly happy about the torture, but after all you've been through, I don't feel the need to hold that against you. So let's put that behind us. AKA kept looking at Izuku for any sign of evil, but after not finding any, she moved on. Very good. Well then, show me around my new fortress. She and Kiba are either going to get along wonderfully or horribly. I'm scared of what'll happen if it's the latter. Izuku thought to himself as he took AKA inside. Well, first, let me show you your room, Izuku said as he opened the door and showed her room. AKA looked over the room. It had been prepared for her the day before. The bed was made, a computer and TV had been set up, and the room was dusted and cleaned. She jumped onto the bed and looked around a little more. Yes, this place is fine for the time being. Obviously, once I become a hero, I'll purchase myself a whole mansion, but for now, this will do. I'm glad you think so. Izuku told her gently. Speaking of becoming a hero, from your files, I've read you've had some trouble training because your body doesn't exactly gain muscle or grow very much, and you can't exactly test your quirk on people. AKA scowled. True. The price for having an amazing quirk is that it's rather hard to train with. Well, in response to this, I have thought of several ways for you to train, Izuku said, pulling out a piece of paper and showing it to her. For one, you could practice some gymnastics and martial arts. This will help you when you don't have anyone under your control to fight for you. Speaking of which, I've also had the idea of giving you some bladed weapon training, since you have to actually make a cut into your opponent in order to take them over. AKA put on a thoughtful pout as she considered Izuku's words. Part of me dislikes having to do things myself, but I will do what I must to make sure villains are punished. Good. One of the most important parts of being a hero is to understand what you can and can't do, especially on your own. Izuku warned her. This place is home to children with powerful quirks like yourself. There are even a few who want to be heroes and they would easily be able to make a cut in an opponent. Izuku was very nervous about this next child. And it wasn't because she had a dangerous quirk. They all had dangerous quirks. And this one wasn't even uncontrollable. To give more details, this child was named AKA. And her quirk was called assimilation. Assimilation was a mutant-type quirk that turned AKA's entire body into a kind of metallic clay-like substance. Her body could change shape to a minor degree, not full-on shape-shifting like Sanson. She could also regenerate if her body had enough nutrients. But the main ability of assimilation was its ability to allow AKA to take over another person's body and mind. All she had to do was insert any part of her body into a person's bloodstream through a cut of some kind. It could be a small piece of herself that she could rip off or her entire body if the cut was big enough. Then this would allow AKA to take over that person's body and mind, giving her full access to their abilities, and depending on how big of a piece of her in that person, she can even access their quirk factor and start to mutate it, causing changes in a person's body and quirk. She could take over as many people as she wanted, adding them to a sort of hive mind. It was a very dangerous quirk, but one that was also controllable. Normally, she'd just be under government watch without them feeling the need to take her away into the DOC program unless she proved to be dangerous. Which she did, because her mindset was almost as dangerous as her quirk. AKA had lived in a small town near the mountains that had been utterly destroyed by villains, leaving very survivors. None of which were AKA's parents, leaving the poor girl alone and devastated. And this had a terrible scar on her mind. This was seen when she was taken to an orphanage which was unfortunately run by a less than suitable director who was rather abusive towards the children. Thanks to the villain attack, AKA now had an unyielding hatred towards villains and anyone who acted like a villain. And so, while most people would despise a man who abused children, AKA's hatred was on another level, shown by when she convinced some of the other children to cut the director with a knife, allowing her to use her quirk to take over his body. She then proceeded to torture him for several days, forcing him to harm himself before giving control of the body back to him temporarily so he could feel the pain. This torture lasted for a week before AKA decided it was enough, forced him to gather up evidence of wrongdoing, and made him turn himself in. Naturally, the authorities realized something wasn't quite right and quickly discovered that AKA was controlling him, and after extracting the piece of her from his body, he immediately told her what AKA had done. Once that was revealed, AKA was deemed too dangerous to be part of normal society at the moment and thus was taken into DOC's care. When confronted about her actions, AKA insisted she was in the right, saying that the only reason she didn't torture him for longer was that she was concerned he would die. So at the very least, she drew a line at that point. Although she stated that she didn't particularly care if the man lived or died, rather she didn't want to be labeled as a killer. It was clear the incident had traumatized her quite severely, and it was going to be hard to convince her that perhaps villains didn't need to be tortured or treated like they weren't human. Especially since that mindset wasn't necessarily popular. Izuku sighed as he looked down at one of the other documents he had to sign. It was a related document to accept a shipment of what was called Vegeta formula, Vegeta being short for vegetables. This formula had one purpose: releasing a person from AKA's control. Because normally, trying to release someone from AKA's control would be almost impossible in a fight. The only way to do so other than this formula would be to remove or destroy the piece of AKA that was in their body. However, a way around that was by exploiting AKA's main weakness: vegetables. She was deadly allergic to vegetables to the point where eating them could actually be fatal to her. As such, if a person under AKA's control were to consume a vegetable, it could kill the piece of AKA that was inside them, thus freeing them of AKA's control. This formula was made to streamline the process. Just throw a bomb filled with this formula at someone AKA was controlling, it'll explode into a gas, and once they breathe it in, that person will quickly be freed of AKA's control. Of course, this gas was very dangerous to AKA and would need to be kept away from her main body. The only reason Izuku felt comfortable accepting this gas was because of the potential danger AKA possessed by living here. Izuku didn't like looking at children as potential villains, but he couldn't turn a blind eye to the possibility of AKA taking control of the other children here, and that would be disastrous. I hope I never have to use this. Izuku shook his head as he signed the paper. Hopefully, everything just works out until I can get them into therapy. Izuku waited outside of the house with Achiko beside him. I'm sure she'll be fine. She hates villains and there are no villains here. Achiko reassured him. Not yet. Rembernies. Izuka pointed out. Achiko's eyes widened. Oh god, I forgot about her. Oh, I am sure you'll figure something out. I hope so, Izuka said as he saw a car drive through the entrance gates and up to the house. The car stopped and the back door opened. At long last. I am free. He heard a young feminine voice say. For some reason, the voice sounded like something you'd hear come out of a villain on an old dubbed anime or like a Power Rangers villain. And then he saw her. Despite being 9 years old, the girl was about as short as Kyoku. Her entire body was metallic silver, looking like a mixture of liquid metal and clay. Her eyes were pure blue, with no pupils or anything, just blue. She wore a mostly yellow and blue dress with some red stripes thrown in, as well as a hairband with similar colors wrapped around the top of her head, which was shaped into a weird tail/ponytail thing that drooped down from her head to her back. Yes, excellent, aka said as she exited the car with a sinister grin on her face. From here, I'll become the most powerful hero in history. Ahahahaha. Never in their lives did either Izuku or Achiko think that they'd hear someone proclaim they wanted to be a hero in a cartoonish villain monologue. This place just gets weird and weirder, huh? Achiko thought to herself. Well, I hope we can provide everything you'll need to achieve that goal, Izuka said as he walked over to the small girl and gave her a friendly smile. AKA looked up at him with an inquisitive glare, putting her finger under her chin as she sized him up. So you are the caretaker of this facility, yes? You're younger than I expected. Well, no matter. I'm sure you heard about the last caretaker that dared to commit evil acts in front of me. Izuka nodded. Yes, I did. And I'm glad you brought him to justice. I'm not particularly happy about the torture, but after all you've been through, I don't feel the need to hold that against you. So let's put that behind us. AKA kept looking at Izuku for any sign of evil, but after not finding any she moved on. Very good. Well then show me around my new fortress. She and Kiba are either going to get along wonderfully or horribly. I'm scared of what'll happen if it's the latter. Izuka thought to himself as he took AKA inside. Well, first, let me show you your room, Izuka said as he opened the door and showed her room. AKA looked over the room. It had been prepared for her the day before. The bed was made, a computer and TV had been set up, and the room was dusted and cleaned. She jumped onto the bed and looked around a little more. Yes, this place is fine for the time being. Obviously, once I become a hero, I'll purchase myself a whole mansion, but for now, this will do. I'm glad you think so. Izuka told her gently. Speaking of becoming a hero, from your files, I've read you've had some trouble training because your body doesn't exactly gain muscle or grow very much, and you can't exactly test your quirk on people. AKA scowled. True. The price for having an amazing quirk is that it's rather hard to train with. Well, in response to this, I have thought of several ways for you to train, Izuka said, pulling out a piece of paper and showing it to her. For one, you could practice some gymnastics and martial arts. This will help you when you don't have anyone under your control to fight for you. Speaking of which, I've also had the idea of giving you some bladed weapon training, since you have to actually make a cut into your opponent in order to take them over. AKA put on a thoughtful pout as she considered Izuku's words. Part of me dislikes having to do things myself, but I will do what I must to make sure villains are punished. Good. One of the most important parts of being a hero is to understand what you can and can't do, especially on your own. Izuka warned her. This place is home to children with powerful quirks like yourself. There are even a few who want to be heroes, and they would easily be able to make a cut in an opponent. Wonderful, they sound like good allies. Hee. Once again the girl let out an evil laugh. Together with the power of friendship, we will crush the villains in mind, body, and spirit. Ahahaha. I've never heard anyone talk about the power of friendship so sinisterly. Izuka thought to himself. Speaking of those kids, I do need you to remind you that while they are powerful, they are also dangerous, which is why they're here. Don't do anything that may cause them to freak out or panic, or it could end in complete disaster for you and everyone else. I know that, AKA stated confidently as she crossed her arms over her chest and closed her eyes cockily. Trust me, I am very smart. I'm sure nothing bad'll happen because of me. I hope so. Also, just to let you know, there is a very tall boy, about 6 feet to be exact. Looks like he's covered in moss. Don't touch him or you may burst into flames. Izuka warned her. Eh? AKA's eyes opened quickly after hearing what Izuku just said. Oh, and there's another girl here who constantly reads the minds of the people around her. She can't stop, so please don't get upset about her. Izuku continued. Eh? AKA repeated, her eyes getting wider. One more thing, there is a girl you may see, she has lavender hair and wears a hoodie, she gets scared very easily. And if she gets too frightened she'll let off a gas that makes you experience a living nightmare that's so awful it's put people in states to where they'll need to have therapy for the rest of their lives. AKA repeated once again, this time much louder as her eyes achieved max wideness. But don't worry. She's gotten a lot better control of it since she first got here. Izuku tried to reassure her before something else came to mind. Sorry, one more thing I promise. You're going to see monsters around here that look like they're made of darkness. That's normal, they're made via the quirk of another child here. Don't worry, they won't hurt you. Oh, okay. AKA was stunned by all this, so Izuku decided to let her learn everything else at her own pace. Well, that's most of the important information. There's a list of rules on a board on this floor. If you need anything, feel free to ask me or one of the temporary workers here. They're only going to be here for a short time, but while they're here you're free to ask them to help within reason, of course. I will do that. AKA responded, still a little shocked. Right, well, I'll let you get comfortable here. Uraraka should have your bags up soon, so just wait a little bit. Izuku told her kindly as he got ready to leave. Remember, if you need anything or anything's wrong, just call me and I'll take care of it. Izuku opened the door to leave and found Yonda standing on the other side with a tray of cookies in her hands. Hello, father. Yonda greeted him cheerily with a big smile on her face before looking past him at AKA. And hello to you, AKA. My name is Yonda, it's a pleasure to meet you. Why is there a voice in my head? AKA panicked for a moment before remembering what Izuku had told her. Wait, the caretaker told me about a psychic girl. This must be her. Wait, is she reading my mind right now? Yes. I do apologize for the scare, but this is the only way I can speak. Yonda told her as she came into the room. I am also deaf, so any attempts to speak to me in a normal way will unfortunately fail. Oh. Well, greetings. I am AKA, the future bane of all villains. AKA introduced herself after getting her bearings. For now, I'll be staying here until my rise to power. Don't worry, if anyone attempts any villainy here, they will regret what they've done very much. Did she just do an evil laugh in her head? Yonda thought to herself while keeping up her friendly smile. I'm sure. Anyway, I've brought some cookies, free of vegetables or vegetable ingredients, of course. Fuku made these. She's another one of the girls that live here. She's a lovely girl but very shy. She wanted to make you these to welcome you here, but she didn't have the courage to come and give you them herself, so I'm here instead. The moment Yonda said vegetable-free, she sped over to her and greedily looked over the tray. Don't mind if I do. She then grabbed the whole tray and shoved it in her mouth, which extended to fit the massive object, and once it was halfway in, she let all the cookies fall into her mouth before spitting the tray back out. Those were delicious. Did you even have time to taste those? Yonda asked her skeptically. I'm tasting them right now. AKA told her. Okay then. I'm just not going to try and understand how your body works. Yonda told her. Anyway, let's talk for a while. I'd love to get to know you better. Yonda, you're not planning anything, are you? Izuku asked her, giving her a questioning look. Of course not, father. I just want to get to know our new friend and welcome her to our wonderful home. Yonda said innocently in a very cheeky tone. Well, I don't really have any reason to suspect you do something wrong here. Please don't prove me wrong. Izuku told her as he started to leave. Well, I'll let you two get acquainted, please behave. Both of you. Yes, father. Yonda said, waving Izuku goodbye as he exited the room before she turned her head to AKA. Now then, let's have a talk. Alright Fuku, just gotta make that pudding and then you can go back to your room, Fuku told herself as she snuck into the kitchen late at night. Alright, first let's get a bowl. She went over to a cabinet and opened it up, only to see AKA hiding inside wearing a gas mask. Found you at last, AKA said. Ahoy! Fuku jumped back and screamed and gas exploded out of her. How fortunate I choose to wear this mask. Truly I am a genius. AKA cackled as she stepped out of the cabinet. Who are you? What do you want with me? Please don't kill me. Fuku quickly realized she'd made a mistake. She jumped away at an angle that made her go further into the kitchen and away from the exit, and now AKA was blocking her path. I am AKA, the new resident of this house, AKA announced, walking closer to Fuku, who backed away as she advanced. You were the one who made me those cookies, weren't you? Fukunoko? Did you think I would allow you to escape after that? Did you really think I wouldn't find you? Oh no. She must have hated the cookies and come to take out her rage on me. Fuku trembled as she backed further and further away from AKA, but the other girl just kept coming forward. Please, spare me. Fuku begged, tears glimmering in her eyes as she kept moving back. However, she stopped once she reached a wall. There was nowhere to go. I spare no one. Ahahahaha. AKA once again evilly cackled as she raised her arms and lunged at Fuku. Naha? Fuku suddenly stopped screaming when AKA threw her hands around her and gave her a hug and a pat on the back. Those cookies were delicious, thank you, AKA told her before separating from her and turning around. Now with that done, I am going to go to sleep and there's nothing anyone can do to stop me. Good night. And with that she just left. Fuku just stood there for a while, unsure of what just happened before eventually coming to a conclusion. I think I'll make that pudding tomorrow night, Fuku told herself. AKA was chilling out in her room, which was now properly decorated with things. There were various posters of superheroes from American comic books covering almost every inch of the walls, and those comic books themselves were all over the floor, stacked atop each other. The girl herself was laying down on her bed, reading one of her comic books, when suddenly there was a knock on her door. Ugh! Who dares disturb me? AKA groaned, putting down her comic and going over to the door. She opened it and on the other side was Fu. Before Fu could say anything, AKA started yelling. You! State your name and business here. Why have you disturbed my relaxation time? Ah, I see we have another color personality here. Fu sighed before introducing himself. My name is Fu. And this Kyosei. Kyosei popped a head out of Fu's shirt, causing AKA to look on in shock. He lives inside me. Don't worry about it. Fu said as Kyosei went back into his body. They must have a quirk similar to my own. Interesting. AKA said, putting her hand on her chin. Anyway, so we heard you want to be a hero, Fu stated. Well, you heard correctly. AKA confirmed, giving him a sinister smile. I plan on becoming a powerful hero and tormenting all evildoers that would do evil. All villains will fear the name AKA. Ahahahaha. Oh, Kiba's gonna love her. Fu thought as he rolled his eyes. Well, me and the other future heroes wanted to see what you're made of. So we gathered up in the training room, you coming? Nah, don't feel like it, AKA said, seemingly dismissing him, only to burst out laughing a few seconds later. As if. Of course, I'll come. I need to see who my allies in villain crushing will be. Well then follow me, Fu told her, before turning around and walking away. Just so you know, I think you guys will get along just fine. Fu led her outside, just outside of Kai's room, where Kai, Kiba, Ken, Nara, Sanson, Netsu, and Yami were waiting. Hello, new friend. Kai greeted her once she came into view, his voice bellowing throughout the forest. Why is he so big? AKA thought to herself when she saw him. Hey there. Welcome to the Future Heroes Club. Netsu said, running over to greet her. I'm Netsu. AKA opened her mouth, but Fu spoke before she could say anything. Yes, he knows he is on fire. That's normal. Fu told her. Okay then, I am AKA. Future bane of all villains. AKA announced. One day I will become a hero and bring pain and suffering to all criminals. Ahahahaha. Ah yeah. I can definitely tell your heroic intentions from your evil laugh. Ken sarcastically remarked as he raised an eyebrow at AKA's statement. Hey, my laugh is not evil. AKA gasped, offended by Ken's observation. It kinda is. Ken retorted. It's the most generic evil laugh I've heard come out of a real person. No, it's not. AKA argued back, glaring at Ken while crossing her arms. A laugh by itself can't be evil. A laugh can only be evil if you're laughing at something bad. Like if you laugh at a funeral, that's an evil laugh. I mean, she's not wrong. Fu shrugged. It's pretty evil to laugh at a funeral. I want people to laugh at my funeral, Netsu replied, causing everyone to look at him in confusion. Why? Why on earth would you want that? AKA asked with the most bemused look on her face. Well, otherwise it'd just be a bunch of sad people in a room. Netsu pointed out casually. I don't want my funeral to be a bunch of sad people in a room. But that's just what a funeral is. Fu tried to explain to him. I don't want my funeral to be a bunch of sad people in a room, Kai said, pouting with all three of his heads. Yeah, me neither. I want my funeral to be a party. Netsu decided. Who would be in the mood to party after you die? Kiba asked him. If you have a party, then people will just try to force themselves to have fun and bottle up their emotions until they explode. Boom. Sanson made herself explode into a puddle to illustrate Kiba's point. Wait. Guys, we got off topic. Fu told them. Remember, we're supposed to test how strong AKA is, not talk about whether or not funerals are supposed to be fun. Well said, Fu. Let's get to what we came here for. Kiba said before cracking her fingers and then her neck. So then new girl, what's your quirk? My quirk is called assimilation. I can rip off pieces of myself and put them inside cuts in people's bodies and then take them over. AKA explained proudly. Wait, doesn't that mean you can't do anything until you cut your opponent? Ken pointed out, immediately seeing a problem here. Well, why yes, AKA admitted, blushing a bit. But once that happens, the villains will be completely helpless. But until that happens, you're completely helpless, Ken remarked harshly before Nara elbowed him. Ow. What? I'm being honest. What he meant to say was, does your quirk have an ability to help you actually cut villains? Nara asked her. Or at least help you survive against them? Well, I can regenerate, my body is really squishy and hard to injure, and I don't feel pain as much. AKA stated sheepishly. So, nothing that can actually help you make a cut in someone? Kiba asked her, giving her a skeptical look. No. AKA began looking downward, avoiding everyone's gazes and sweating nervously. I see. Fu looked at her and thought for a while. She reminds me of me back before I bonded with Kyosei. Fu noted. Well, I guess her quirk could be way more useful than mine in the right circumstance. Alright guys, looks like we're going to have to do things a bit differently, Fu told them. Since her quirk is not as self-sufficient as most of ours, she might work better in a team fight. So here's what we're gonna do. Kiba and AKA will fight against Ken and Nara. Huh. Why'd I have to be teamed up with him, her? Ken and Nara said at the same time before glaring at each other. Can you two stop pretending to hate each other for a few minutes and just do it? Fu sighed. It looks like we'll be working together. I am the great and mighty Kiba, my strength will pull us through. Kiba told AKA confidently. Well, my quirk will ensure our victory and their doom. AKA retorted. Make sure to use my abilities well. Ahahaha. Alright, all of you will be given some time to prepare and strategize, Fu told them. Then we'll meet in the forest and start fighting. Got it? Good. Let's get started. After about 10 minutes, everyone had gathered in a large opening in the forest. Kiba and AKA stood on one side and Ken and Nara stood on the other side, with all the other kids sitting a good distance away from them and Kai looking down on them all. Alright, everyone ready? Fu asked them. 1 second. Nara said before looking at Ken. Better not mess this up, doofus. That's what I should be saying, Ken replied as they both selected a form on their Omnitrix. They both slammed down on their devices and in a flash of green and pink, the two had transformed. Ken had turned into Stinkfly and Nara had turned into blocks. Oh, this might be a problem. AKA realized. I don't suppose you can take over that Lego ape, can you? Kiba whispered to her. Unless it has a bloodstream, no, AKA told her. So then we just need to focus on Ken, Kiba told her. Try to keep Nara distracted. Alright, let's get this over with, Fu announced as he stepped back. 3.2.1. Go. Immediately Ken tried to take to the sky while shooting goo at Kiba to try and keep her away. Kiba had, at the same time, rushed towards Ken and had to roll to the side to avoid the goo, and she continued running towards Ken while narrowly dodging the goo. Ken hadn't made it very far into the air by the time Kiba reached him, and Kiba jumped up and grabbed one of his legs. Hey! Let go! Ken tried to shake her off, but Kiba kept a firm grip on his leg and threw a piece of AKA onto one of his wings, which stuck like glue. Before Kiba could do anything else, Nara turned her arm into a cannon and shot a part of her Lego-like body at Kiba, knocking the vampiric girl off her brother. Kiba rolled across the ground before pushing herself upright. Meanwhile, Ken tried to shake off the piece of AKA that had been thrown on him, but it held on tight. It's not coming off. Then get in the air and don't get cut, moron. Nara ordered. Don't boss me around. Ken argued while also doing exactly what she said and getting higher up in the air. Alright Kiba, try cutting me now, AK. Kiba then proceeded to start taking chunks out of the ground and throwing them at Ken as fast as she could. Ken of course tried flying around to avoid the projectiles, but that was easier said than done. He had to stay in bounds, meaning his movement options were limited and Kiba had lots of ground to throw at him. A little help here. Ugh. Can't you do anything on your own? Nara asked him sarcastically before aiming her arm cannon at Kiba to shoot at her again, only for AKA to stand in her way. Not so fast. Before you fight her you must first face me. As AKA was giving her speech, Nara extended one of her arms and grabbed her. Nara's massive hand encompassed most of her tiny body. Nara's fist then expanded around AKA before transforming into a Lego brick prison box, trapping the silver girl for the time being. Curses! AKA screamed, although it could barely be heard from inside the box. Once Nara disconnected herself from the box and grew back her hand, she grabbed the box and used it to launch herself over it, right at Kiba. Nara extended her fist down at Kiba and the vampire girl was forced to jump back to dodge it and halt her assault. "Alright, Ken. Gunk her up so I can trap her," Nara shouted at her brother. However, the response she got was less than pleasing. "Ek, Ken." Nara looked up at Ken, who was holding his head in pain. One of the chunks of ground that Kiba had thrown at him successfully made a small cut on his head and the chunk of aka crawled down towards it and was now crawling into the wound. "Ag. Oh, this feels so wrong. Ag." It didn't take long for Ken to start falling to the ground, crashing into the dirt, before a flash of red overtook him and Ken had been turned back to normal. "Ah-ha-ha-ha." Aka laughed from inside her box. "Your demise is at hand. Now witness my power." "Ag. Gah." Ken groaned in pain while his body suddenly started changing. His hair turned a silverish white, and his eyes turned bright blue. All of a sudden, Ken stopped groaning and his face morphed into a twisted grin and looked up at Nara with a sinister glare. "Hello, sister?" "Yeah, nope." Nara launched her arm at Ken, grabbing him and morphing her hand into a binding prison that would keep him from moving his arms and touching the Omnitrix. "Please don't say anything like that with my brother's mouth. In that case, I'll let my fist do the talking." Ken said as suddenly they were engulfed in green and then were transformed into 4 arms who immediately burst out of the bind that Nara had put them in. All 4 of them. "Ah-ha-ha-ha." She made him change without using the Omnitrix? Nara thought to herself. Come to think of it, she must have made him change back to normal too. Can she alter the way a quirk works when she takes over someone? I must admit this is a wonderful body. With such an interesting quirk. Ken said as they inspected their body. So many powers. I wonder if I'll be able to use all of them in this fight. Let's find out. Ken started approaching Nara, causing her to start backing up. However, Kiba suddenly dashed behind her, cutting her off. Now. Don't run away. This is where things get interesting. Kiba smirked at Nara viciously, knowing she'd already won this fight. Of course, with the odds stacked against her, Nara knew that just as well. And did the only logical thing she could do in this case. I give up, Nara said, raising her arms as proof of her surrender. Not much point in fighting a 3 versus 1 battle. What? Kiba and Ken shouted in shock and slight outrage. And that's it. Kiba and win. Fu quickly stepped in. Congratulations, now please get out of Ken's body. Oh, but I didn't even get to do anything with it. Ken whined. You want to fight with it, that's something. Not get out? Fu told her again, very sternly. Fine. Ken pouted, and in a flash of red Ken's body returned to its normal form. Then after a few moments, Ken's hair and eye color returned to normal as the piece of that had been in him crawled out of the cut on his forehead. Off. Ken's eyes rolled up and he proceeded to fall on his back. Ow. Nara went over to her brother while Kiba went over to AKA's prison box to break her out of it. You okay, doofus? Nara asked, slightly concerned about his well-being. Never again. Ken groaned as he regained full control of his body, with the only noticeable side effect being a killer headache. I think I hate Ghost Freak even more now. If that's what it feels like to get possessed. Were you even awake while she was in control of you? Nara asked him as she offered him a hand, helping him lift himself off the ground. No. I just felt something going through my body and then everything went black. Then I woke up with this headache. Ugh. Ken groaned, clutching his poor head. Feel like I got hit by a truck. Meanwhile, Fu used one of Kyosiai's tendrils to pick up the piece of AKA that had been inside Ken and bring it to his hand. What an interesting quirk. All of them were now gathered, Nara had returned to normal, and AKA had been freed. That was short, Yami said, pointing out the obvious. Yes, it was rather disappointing. I was hoping you'd at least try to fight after Ken was possessed. Kiba said, frowning at the older girl who gave her a deadpan look. Kiba, I'm not sure I could beat you in a one-on-one fight. Let alone you and my idiot brother. Nara told her. Hey, it's not my fault I got possessed. Do you know how hard it is to get through a fight without getting cut? Ken argued, glaring at his sister. If I could have just used Heat Blast, there's no way I could have gotten taken over. We already told you why you couldn't do that. Fu reminded him. Before the fight had started, Fu had told Ken not to use Heat Blast as the part of the forest they were in didn't have any lakes around, so the Goliaths couldn't put out any potential forest fires Ken may start in that form. Ken was opposed to this, but Fu was insistent that it's how things had to be unless he wanted to delay the fight for hours so that way they could find another place for them to fight. This was a lie, however. And in truth, Fu realized that both Ken and Nara had ways to make themselves immune to AKA's quirk and needed an excuse to keep at least one of them from doing that. He did want to see AKA's quirk in action after all. Well, what did everyone think of AKA's quirk? Fu asked. It's pretty cool. All you have to do is make a tiny cut in the enemy and the fight's over. Netsa gushed. Yeah, it'll make fighting villains super duper easy. Kai added, his massive head looking down at AKA with a big smile. I must admit, while her quirk may not make her all too useful on her own, her usefulness as an ally is impressive. Kiba praised her. It's powerful. Yami simply stated. Yeah, I thought that if Ken could stay high in the air, we could avoid letting her use it, but trying not to get cut in a battle with someone around your level of power sounds like a nightmare. Nara sighed, shaking her head. I only realized how powerful your quirk was when I started thinking about how to fight against it. Should have given you more credit. Meanwhile, AKA had a smile on her face that was so big that it would have hurt if her body wasn't so stretchable, and she would have blushed if her body was capable of it. Well, of course, my quirk is amazing. And with the help of all of you, we will crush our enemies beneath our heel and make them do our bidding. Ahahaha. I like the sound of that. Kiba added, patting her on the back. Come, everyone. Let's celebrate the new addition to the heroic part of this household. With a wondrous feast. Yaha. And that's it for today. I hope you enjoyed. If you did, please like, subscribe, share the video, and support the original writer. See you in the next video.